3 days ago, Elara Vale buried her father. 2 days ago, armed men arrived at her apartment with a contract signed in blood and debt. Tonight, she's being handed over like currency to the most feared man in the American underworld, Lucien Devereux. The name alone silences rooms. But as she stands trembling in a wedding dress she never chose, Elara doesn't know the terrifying truth yet. This marriage isn't about her father's debt. It's about obsession. Lucien has wanted her for 2 years. And men like him don't ask permission. They take what they believe already belongs to them. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. Rain hammered the stained glass windows like fists demanding entry. Elara stood in the cathedral's back chamber, her reflection distorted in the antique mirror. White dress, hollow eyes, hands shaking so badly she couldn't fasten the pearl buttons running down her spine. The fabric felt expensive, suffocating, like wearing someone else's skin. "Miss Vale?" The voice came from the doorway. A woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled tight, face carved from disapproval. "It's time." Elara's throat closed. "I need another minute." Mr. Devereux doesn't wait. Then maybe he should learn. The woman's expression didn't change. "You can walk down that aisle, or my associates will carry you. Your choice." Not really a choice. Nothing had been a choice since the moment her father's gambling debts became her inheritance. Elara had spent 3 days trying to find a way out. Lawyers who wouldn't return calls, friends who suddenly stopped answering texts, even a desperate attempt to flee the city that ended with black sedans blocking every exit from her neighborhood. The message was clear. Lucien Devereux owned her now. She forced herself to breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The technique her therapist taught her for panic attacks, back when she had insurance and a future that made sense, back when she was 24 and studying nursing and planning to open a clinic for people who couldn't afford health care. Back when her biggest worry was student loans, not becoming collateral in a transaction she didn't understand. The woman stepped aside. Beyond her, the hallway stretched toward distant music, something classical, something that probably cost more than Elara's entire education. Her heels clicked against marble as she walked, each step echoing in the vast silence. At the cathedral entrance, massive wooden doors stood open. Beyond them, candlelight flickered across hundreds of faces she didn't recognize. Men in expensive suits, women dripping jewelry, all of them watching, waiting. And at the altar, standing perfectly still beneath the vaulted ceiling, was Lucien Devereux. Elara had seen his photograph once, in a news article about organized crime that her father kept hidden in his desk. The image hadn't prepared her. Photographs couldn't capture the way he commanded space, the dangerous stillness that suggested violence held in check. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black like he was attending a funeral instead of a wedding. His face was sharp angles and controlled intensity, high cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes the color of amber catching firelight. He was looking directly at her. The music swelled. Someone pushed a bouquet of white roses into her hands. Elara's legs moved without permission, carrying her down the aisle while her mind screamed to run. But where? The cathedral doors were flanked by men with barely concealed weapons. The guests watched with expressions that ranged from curiosity to something uglier. Anticipation, maybe, like they were waiting for her to break. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Lucien's gaze never wavered as she approached. Most people looked away when you stared back. He didn't. His attention felt physical, like hands against her skin, invasive and impossible to ignore. When she reached the altar, he extended one hand toward her. Elara looked at it, looked at his face, saw nothing that resembled kindness or mercy or anything human, just calculation, ownership. She placed her hand in his because the alternative was worse. His fingers closed around hers, warm, steady, surprisingly gentle. The contrast made her stomach turn. She wanted him to be cruel, wanted him to match the monster everyone said he was. Instead, he looked at her like she was something valuable, something he'd been waiting for. The officiant began speaking. Words about commitment and partnership and forever. Elara heard none of it. Her entire focus narrowed to the man beside her, to the heat of his hand and the way his thumb moved against her wrist in slow circles, like he was memorizing her pulse. Do you, Lucien Devereux, take this woman? I do. His voice was deep, rough-edged, certain. And do you, Elara Vale, eh? The words stuck in her throat. She wanted to scream no, wanted to rip off the dress and run until her lungs gave out. But her father's face flashed through her mind. The way he looked in the hospital bed, gasping for air, apologizing through morphine for debts she didn't know existed. I do, she whispered. Lucien's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief. You may kiss the bride. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. Lucien stepped closer, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something darker, gunpowder maybe, or just the scent of a man who lived in violence. His hand came up to cup her jaw, fingers sliding into her hair with practiced ease. Breathe, he murmured. I'm not going to hurt you. Then he kissed her. It wasn't brutal, wasn't punishing. That would have been easier. Instead, his mouth moved against hers with devastating patience, like he had all the time in the world and intended to use every second. Heat flooded through her body, panic and fury, and something else she refused to name. When he finally pulled back, she was trembling and hated herself for it. Applause erupted through the cathedral. Lucien's hand settled against the small of her back, possessive and firm, guiding her down the aisle while cameras flashed and strangers smiled. Outside, rain had turned to mist. Black armored sedans lined the street, engines running, surrounded by men in dark suits holding umbrellas and weapons with equal casual confidence. Lucien opened the door to the lead vehicle himself. After you, Mrs. Devereux. The name hit her like a slap. She was someone else now. Someone who belonged to a man she'd never spoken to before tonight. She climbed inside. The interior smelled like leather and money. Lucien slid in beside her, the door closing with a heavy thunk that sounded like a prison cell locking. The driver didn't wait for instructions. The convoy pulled away from the curb in perfect formation, leaving the cathedral behind. Elara stared out the tinted window, watching the city blur past. They were heading north, away from downtown, toward the cliffs where old money built estates designed to keep the rest of the world out. You're safe with me, Lucien said quietly. She turned to face him. Safe? You forced me into marriage. Your father made choices. I'm giving you a way out of the consequences. By making me your property. By making you my wife. His jaw tightened. There's a difference. Is there? Elara's voice shook with rage she could no longer contain. Because from where I'm sitting, you bought me. That's what this was. A transaction. So don't pretend it's anything else. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Rain streaked the windows, casting moving shadows across his face. You think I wanted this? Wanted to marry a woman who looks at me like I'm something she scraped off her shoe? Then why? Because the alternative was worse. His voice dropped to something cold and final. Your father owed money to people who would have sold you to cover the debt. Not marriage, actual slavery, underground markets that deal in human cargo. I made sure that didn't happen. Elara's breath caught. You're lying. Ask yourself why I'm bothering to lie. He turned toward the window, dismissing her. You're mine now either way. The words should have terrified her. Maybe they did, but underneath the fear was something else. A creeping awareness that Lucien Devereux didn't need to explain himself, didn't need to justify anything. The fact that he was trying suggested something she didn't want to examine too closely. The convoy climbed higher into the hills. Trees pressed close to the road, branches scraping against the windows. Then suddenly they broke through into open space, and Elara saw it. The estate rose from the clifftop like something out of a Gothic novel, stone and iron and glass, sprawling across acres of manicured grounds. Lights blazed from every window, turning the rain-soaked landscape into something both beautiful and menacing. High walls, guard towers, security that looked more military than residential. Welcome home, Lucien said. Home. The word felt obscene. The car stopped beneath the covered entrance. Lucien exited first, then offered his hand again. Elara ignored it and climbed out alone, her heels clicking against wet stone. Staff lined the entrance, housekeepers, security, people whose jobs revolved around maintaining this monument to wealth and power. They bowed slightly as Lucien passed, their faces carefully neutral. Inside, the mansion was even more overwhelming. Marble floors polished to mirrors, crystal chandeliers dripping light, art that probably belonged in museums hanging on walls that seemed to stretch forever. Everything was cold and perfect and felt nothing like a home. "Your room is upstairs," Lucien said, already moving toward a staircase wide enough to drive a car through. "Third door on the left. Your belongings have already been moved from your apartment." Elara froze. "You went through my things?" "I had people pack them, carefully." He paused on the stairs, looking back. "You'll find everything exactly as you left it. Except I'm not where I left it." Her voice cracked. "I'm here. In this prison." "It's not a prison." "Then I can leave." Silence. Lucien's expression hardened into something unreadable. "No. Then it's a prison." Elara crossed her arms, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she looked. Wedding dress, mascara probably running, standing in a marble foyer arguing with a man who could end her life with a phone call. "I want my own room, my own space. You don't touch me, you don't come near me, and you sure as hell don't pretend this is a real marriage." "Agreed." The word came too easily. She blinked. "What? You want boundaries? Fine. I'm not interested in forcing myself on a woman who doesn't want me." Lucien turned and continued up the stairs. "Your room locks from the inside. Use it." Elara followed because she had nowhere else to go. The hallway upstairs was lined with closed doors, each probably leading to rooms larger than her entire apartment. Lucien stopped at the third door, pushed it open, then stepped aside. The room beyond was enormous. King-sized bed draped in silk. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A sitting area with furniture that looked antique and priceless. And in the corner, stacked in neat boxes, were her belongings, books, clothes, the framed photograph of her mother she kept on her nightstand. "Bathrooms through there," Lucien gestured to a door on the left. "Closets already stocked, but if you need anything else, tell Maria. She's the head housekeeper." "Why are you doing this?" The question escaped before Elara could stop it. Lucien paused in the doorway. "Doing what?" "Being," she gestured helplessly, "reasonable. I expected a monster." His smile held no warmth. "Give it time, Elara. I'm sure I'll live down to your expectations eventually." He closed the door behind him. Elara heard his footsteps recede down the hallway, then silence. She was alone. Elara moved to the window on shaking legs. Below, the estate spread out like a kingdom, gardens and fountains and structures she couldn't identify in the darkness. Beyond the walls, cliffs dropped away to the ocean, waves crashing against rocks hundreds of feet below. Beautiful. Isolated. Escape-proof. She pressed her forehead against the glass and finally let herself cry. Sak. Morning came too bright and too early. Elara woke disoriented, tangled in sheets that smelled like lavender and money. For one blessed moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, the cathedral, Lucien's hand against her spine. She was married to a criminal. Sunlight streamed through windows she'd forgotten to cover. Her wedding dress lay crumpled on the floor where she'd torn it off at 3 a.m., too exhausted to care about the thousands of dollars of fabric. She'd slept in her underwear and woke up cold. Someone knocked on the door. "Mrs. Devereux?" The name still felt wrong. "What?" "Breakfast is ready. Mr. Devereux asked that you join him in the dining room." "Tell Mr. Devereux I'm not hungry." A pause. "He was quite insistent, ma'am." "Then he can be quite disappointed." Footsteps retreated. Elara waited for consequences. Someone breaking down the door, dragging her downstairs, forcing compliance. But nothing happened. Apparently Lucien meant what he said about boundaries. She showered in a bathroom larger than her old bedroom, using products that probably cost more per ounce than her hourly wage at the hospital. The hot water felt good against sore muscles, washing away the previous night's makeup and the lingering sense of violation. When she emerged, someone had been in the room. The wedding dress was gone, replaced by clothes laid out on the bed. Jeans, a soft sweater, underwear still in packaging. The fact that strangers had access to her room while she showered made her skin crawl. Elara dressed quickly, then explored. The closet Lucien mentioned was actually a separate room lined with designer clothes in her exact size. Shoes arranged by color. jewelry in locked cases. Everything perfectly organized and completely impersonal, like he'd hired someone to build a wardrobe for a stranger. Because that's exactly what she was. Her stomach growled, betraying her. Elara ignored it and returned to the window. In daylight, the estate looked even larger. Stone paths winding through gardens, a greenhouse near the cliff edge, what looked like a garage complex in the distance. Men in suits patrolled the grounds with visible weapons and dogs. Security cameras tracked movement from every angle. Not a home. A fortress. Another knock. Mrs. Devereux? Mr. Devereux requests your presence in his study. Requests. Like she had a choice. Elara opened the door. A young woman stood in the hallway, mid-30s, professional, wearing a simple black dress. I'm Maria, head housekeeper. If you'll follow me? And if I won't? Maria's expression remained neutral. Then I'll wait here until you do. At least she was honest. Elara followed her through the mansion's labyrinth, past rooms she didn't recognize, down stairs that seemed to go on forever. They stopped at a heavy wooden door. Maria knocked twice, then opened it without waiting for a response. Lucien's study was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked like it cost more than a car. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. When he saw Elara, he ended the call without saying goodbye. You came. He sounded genuinely surprised. Your housekeeper was very persistent. Maria's good at her job. Lucien gestured to a chair. Sit. I'll stand. Sit, Elara. Not a request. We need to talk. She sat because fighting every battle would exhaust her, and she needed to pick which ones mattered. Lucien moved behind his desk but didn't sit, his hands flat against the polished surface. There are rules, he said, for your safety and mine. I don't remember agreeing to follow your rules. Then let me rephrase. There are consequences if you don't. His voice hardened. You don't leave the estate without security. You don't make phone calls without approval. You don't speak to anyone about our arrangement. You don't try to run. Elara's hands clenched in her lap. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. There's a difference. Keep telling yourself that. Lucien's jaw tightened. Your father died owing money to the Volkov syndicate. Russian mafia. They traffic women, Elara. Sell them to the highest bidder. When he couldn't pay, they came for you. I intercepted that sale, married you instead, made you untouchable. How noble. Sarcasm dripped from every word. My hero. I'm not your hero. He leaned forward, amber eyes blazing. But I'm the only thing standing between you and men who would break you for sport. So yes, there are rules. You follow them, or I can't guarantee your safety. Understand? Elara met his gaze without flinching. I understand you're a control freak who bought a wife because normal women won't touch you. The words landed like a slap. Lucien straightened slowly, his expression shifting into something cold and distant. We're done here. Maria will show you around the estate. Stay within the walls. Don't test me, Elara. I'm trying to be reasonable, but my patience has limits. So does mine. She stood and walked out before he could respond, Maria trailing silently behind. The hallway seemed longer on the way back, every step taking her deeper into a life she didn't choose and couldn't escape. Days blurred together. Elara established a routine designed to avoid Lucien entirely. She woke early, explored the grounds while he worked in his study, spent afternoons in the library reading books she'd never had time for, and returned to her room before dinner. Staff brought her meals on covered trays. She ate alone. Lucien didn't push, didn't demand her presence or force interaction. The few times they crossed paths in hallways, he nodded politely and kept walking, like they were strangers sharing a house. Except strangers didn't know how you took your coffee. The first time Elara walked into the library and found a fresh cup waiting, cream, no sugar, exactly how she liked it, she dismissed it as coincidence. The second time, she started to wonder. The third time, she asked Maria. Mr. Devereux mentioned you prefer it that way, Maria said simply. He's never seen me drink coffee. Maria's expression remained carefully neutral. Mr. Devereux notices things. That was the problem. Lucien noticed everything. Elara discovered her favorite novels appearing on the library shelves, books she'd searched for online months ago but never purchased. The thermostat in her room adjusted to exactly 68 degrees without her asking. Fresh flowers appeared daily, always peonies, which she'd mentioned once in a college essay 5 years ago. He was watching her, learning her, memorizing details like he was studying for a test. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt oddly intimate in a way that made her deeply uncomfortable. 2 weeks after the wedding, Elara discovered the greenhouse. She'd seen it from her window, glass structure near the cliff edge, overgrown with vines. Nobody seemed to use it. Out of boredom and desperation for space that didn't feel like a cage, she walked down one afternoon and tried the door. It opened. Inside, the air was thick and humid, smelling of earth and decay. Broken pots littered the ground. Dead plants hung from rafters. Everything covered in dust and neglect, like someone had abandoned it mid-project and never returned. But underneath the ruin, Elara could see potential. The structure was sound, the glass intact. With work, it could be beautiful. She was on her hands and knees, clearing debris from a corner, when someone cleared their throat behind her. Lucien stood in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. For the first time since the wedding, he looked almost human. "I thought you'd avoid me forever," he said. Elara sat back on her heels, wiping dirt from her hands. "I wasn't avoiding you. I was ignoring you. There's a difference." "Noted." He stepped inside, looking around at the wreckage. "You like it?" "I like that it's not part of your house." "It is part of my house. The property line extends to the cliff edge." "Then I like that you're not in it." Elara stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. "What do you want, Lucien?" He moved closer, picking up a broken pot and examining it like it held answers. "I wanted to see you." "Why?" "Because you're my wife." He set the pot down carefully. "And I haven't spoken to you in 2 weeks." "Whose fault is that?" "Yours, mostly." No accusation in his voice, just fact. "But I understand. You need time." Elara laughed bitterly. "Time for what? To accept that my life is over? That I'm trapped in a mansion with a man I don't know, following rules I didn't agree to, living a life I never wanted? Time to realize it doesn't have to be a prison." Lucien's voice softened. "The greenhouse. You want to fix it?" The change in subject threw her. "What?" "I'm asking if you want to restore it, make it functional again." Elara stared at him, searching for the trap. "Why would you let me?" "Because it makes you happy." He said it like it was obvious, like her happiness mattered. "Tell me what you need. Tools, plants, equipment. I'll have it here by morning." "I don't want your gifts." "It's not a gift. It's your space." Lucien moved toward the door, then paused. "I meant what I said, Elara. You're safe here. And eventually, you might even believe it." He left before she could respond. Elara stood alone in the ruined greenhouse, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. This was manipulation. Had to be. Lucien Devereux was a criminal, a man who bought her like property, and now he was playing the generous husband trying to win her over with gestures designed to exploit her dreams. Except he hadn't asked for anything in return. The next morning, a truck arrived with supplies. New pots, rich soil, seeds, tools, everything she would have bought herself if she had the money and freedom. No note, no demands, just materials and possibility. Elara spent the day working in the greenhouse, her hands in the dirt for the first time since her father got sick. Since her life derailed. She planted herbs and vegetables, things that could grow and be useful. Tomatoes, basil, rosemary, practical choices. When the sun began to set, she looked up and found Lucien watching from the mansion's terrace, too far away to see his expression, close enough that she knew he'd been there for a while. She should have felt violated, surveilled. Instead, she felt something closer to curiosity. 3 weeks into the marriage, Lucien broke his own rules. Elara was in the library, curled up in her favorite chair with a novel, when he walked in without knocking. Not aggressive, just present. He poured himself scotch from the bar cart, then sat in the chair across from hers without asking permission. "We need to attend an event," he said. She didn't look up from her book. "No. It's not a request. I have business obligations, and you're my wife. You need to be seen with me. Find another wife." "Elara." His voice held a warning. "I've given you space, respected your boundaries. This is non-negotiable." She finally met his eyes. What kind of event? Charity gala? Old money pretending they care about poor people while drinking champagne that costs more than most people make in a month. Bitterness leaked through his careful tone. You'll need a dress. Maria has options. And if I refuse? Then I'll have security carry you to the car, and you'll arrive furious and humiliated. He took a long drink. Your choice. Not a choice. Elara slammed her book shut. You're an asshole. Frequently, Lucien stood, straightening his jacket. The gala is Saturday, 8 p.m. Don't make me come find you. He left, and Elara threw the book at the closed door with enough force to dent the wood. Eek. Saturday arrived too quickly. Maria presented 3 designer gowns, black, red, emerald green. All beautiful, all expensive enough to fund her entire nursing degree. Elara chose the green because it reminded her of the greenhouse, of the one space that felt like hers. The dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. Lucien probably had her measurements memorized along with everything else. Hair and makeup appeared courtesy of professionals who worked in efficient silence. When they finished, Elara barely recognized herself. Elegant, polished, looking like she belonged in Lucien's world. The disguise was perfect. Lucien was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in a tuxedo that should have been illegal. He looked up as she descended, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite surprise, something rawer. You look... He stopped, tried again. Beautiful. You look beautiful. Elara reached the bottom step and kept her voice cold. Let's get this over with. The drive took 40 minutes. They didn't speak. The hotel where the gala was held looked like a palace. Valet parking, red carpet, photographers everywhere. Lucien exited first, then offered his hand. This time, Elara took it because cameras were watching. His fingers laced through hers with practiced ease. Possessive. Claiming. Inside, the ballroom was packed with exactly the kind of people Elara expected. Politicians, business owners, society wives dripping diamonds and judgment. They all knew who Lucien was, what he represented. But money and power granted immunity from moral scrutiny, so they smiled and shook his hand and pretended organized crime was just another form of entrepreneurship. Lucien kept her close, his hand never leaving the small of her back. He introduced her as his wife without explanation, and people accepted it because questioning Lucien Devereux was bad for one's health. Smile, he murmured against her ear. You look like you're being tortured. I am being tortured. Dramatic. But there was amusement in his voice. They moved through the crowd, Lucien navigating social obligations with the same precision he probably used for business deals. Elara played her part, nodded politely, made small talk, pretended she wasn't screaming internally. Then a man approached with the kind of confidence that came from inherited wealth and zero consequences. Mid-40s, expensive suit, eyes that lingered too long on her dress. Devereux. He offered his hand. Didn't expect to see you at these things. Lucien's smile didn't reach his eyes. Harrison, surprised you're still showing your face after that scandal with your assistant. Harrison's expression tightened. Ancient history. And who's this? My wife, Elara. Wife? Harrison's surprise was genuine. Didn't know you were the marrying type. People surprise you. Lucien's hand flexed against Elara's back. Not quite possessive, more like a warning. We should keep moving. But Harrison wasn't finished. He leaned closer, whiskey on his breath. She's gorgeous, Devereux. Where'd you find her? That's enough. Lucien's voice dropped to something dangerous. Just making conversation. Harrison's eyes slid back to Elara. You ever get tired of him, sweetheart? Give me a call. I could show you. Lucien moved faster than Elara could track. One moment, they were standing in polite conversation. The next, Harrison was bent backward over a table, Lucien's hand wrapped around his throat, champagne flutes crashing to the floor. Touch her. Look at her. Think about her. Lucien's voice was barely human. And I'll bury you so deep, they'll never find the body. Understand? Harrison nodded frantically, face turning purple. Lucien released him and straightened his jacket like nothing happened. Around them, the crowd had gone silent, watching, judging. Someone would call the police if this were any other man, but it was Lucien Devereux, and the rules didn't apply. He turned to Elara, offering his hand. Let's go. She stared at him. This man who moved between civilized and savage with terrifying ease, who threatened murder in a ballroom full of witnesses and faced zero consequences, who looked at her now with something almost like concern. Now, Elara. She took his hand because staying felt more dangerous than leaving. They exited through a side door, bypassing the valet. Lucien led her to the car himself, opened the door, waited until she was inside before slamming it hard enough to make her flinch. He didn't speak during the drive home. His jaw was locked, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Elara had never seen him drive himself. Always security, always carefully controlled distance. But tonight he gripped the wheel like he was trying to strangle it, taking corners too fast, the engine growling with barely restrained violence. They pulled up to the estate in half the time it took to leave. Lucien killed the engine and sat there, breathing hard. "I'm sorry," he said finally. Elara blinked. "What?" "For losing control, for making a scene, for—" He slammed his palm against the steering wheel. "For all of it. You threatened to murder someone. He disrespected you." "He disrespected you? I'm just the property you defended." Lucien turned to face her, amber eyes blazing in the darkness. "You're not property, Elara. You're my wife. And when someone threatens what's mine, I respond. It's who I am." "A psychopath? A man who protects what matters." His voice softened. "Even if what matters doesn't want to be protected." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning Elara didn't want to examine. She reached for the door handle. "I'm going inside." "Elara, don't." She stepped out of the car. "Just don't." She walked into the mansion without looking back, her hands shaking and her mind racing with the truth she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. Lucien Devereux was dangerous. Not because he was violent, she'd known that from the beginning, but because underneath the control and the rules and the careful distance, he was becoming real. A man instead of a monster. Someone capable of rage and restraint, possession and patience. And that terrified her more than anything else. The days after the gala felt different, heavier. Like the air itself had thickened with something Elara couldn't name but felt pressing against her skin every time she crossed paths with Lucien in Hossa in the hallways. He didn't apologize again. Didn't mention Harrison or the scene or the drive home where his hands had trembled against the steering wheel. Instead, he returned to the careful distance they'd maintained for weeks. Polite nods, brief acknowledgments, ships passing in the enormous space of the estate. Except now Elara caught him watching her. Not obviously. Lucien was too controlled for that, but she'd turn while working in the greenhouse and see his silhouette in a third-floor window. Or she'd reach for a book in the library and notice a fresh cup of coffee appearing on the side table, still steaming. Once, she woke at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom and saw light beneath her door. Heard footsteps pause outside, then retreat. He was orbiting her, maintaining distance while somehow getting closer. It made her furious and confused in equal measure. 4 days after the gala, Elara was replanting tomatoes when Maria appeared in the greenhouse doorway, her usual professional mask slipping slightly. "Mrs. Devereux, Mr. Devereux requests your presence in the dining room for dinner." Elara didn't look up from the seedling she was transferring. "Tell him I already ate." "He was quite specific that you join him." "And I'm quite specific that I won't." Maria shifted uncomfortably. "He said to tell you it's important, business-related." That made Elara pause. Lucien had never mentioned business around her, never pulled her into that part of his life. She brushed dirt from her hands and stood. "Fine. Give me 10 minutes." She went upstairs, washed the soil from beneath her fingernails, changed from her work clothes into jeans and a sweater. No dress, no makeup. If Lucien wanted her presence, he'd get the unpolished version. The dining room was ridiculous. A table that could seat 20 crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of people who probably died centuries ago. Lucien sat at the head, paper spread in front of him, a glass of scotch at his elbow. He looked tired. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, jaw tight with tension. He stood when she entered. Always the gesture. "Thank you for coming." Maria said it was important. Elara remained standing near the door. "What do you want?" "To talk. Sit, please." She moved to the chair farthest from him and sat. Talk. Lucien studied her for a long moment, then pushed a photograph across the table. Elara picked it up. A man in his 50s, graying hair, expensive suit, dead eyes. Viktor Volkov, Lucien said. Head of the Russian syndicate your father owed money to. Elara's stomach turned. Why are you showing me this? Because he's been asking questions. About you. About our marriage. Lucien's voice was carefully controlled. He doesn't believe it's real. It's not real. He doesn't know that. But he's starting to suspect, which means he's wondering if you're still available to collect on your father's debt. The room felt colder. Elara set the photograph down like it might burn her. You said I was safe. You are. As long as everyone believes this marriage is legitimate. Lucien leaned forward, candlelight casting shadows across his face. Which means we need to be seen together, publicly, convincingly. We were just at a gala, where you looked like I was holding you hostage. His jaw tightened. Volkov has people everywhere, Elara. They report back. Right now, the word is that Lucien Devereux's new wife hates him, that she avoids him, refuses to be in the same room. Because I do hate you. The words came out sharper than she intended. Then learn to fake it better. No heat in his voice. Just exhaustion. Because if Volkov thinks this marriage is a sham, he'll come for you. And I won't be able to stop him without starting a war that will get people killed. Elara's hands clenched in her lap. What are you asking? Appearances. Dinner together. Public outings. Convince the world we're actually married. He drained his scotch. I'm not asking you to love me, Elara. I'm asking you to survive. By pretending to be your devoted wife. By pretending to tolerate my existence long enough that Volkov loses interest. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him to go to hell and take his dangerous world with him. But the fear in his eyes was real, and underneath her anger was the creeping awareness that Lucien was trying to protect her the only way he knew how. Fine, her voice came out flat. But we have rules. Name them. No touching unless absolutely necessary. No kissing, no pretending this is anything other than what it is. A performance. Lucien's expression didn't change. Agreed. And you tell me the truth. About your business, about threats, about anything that affects my safety. No more secrets, and he hesitated. That alone told her how much she was asking. Some secrets keep you safe. And some secrets get people killed. Elara stood. You want me to play the devoted wife? Then treat me like a partner, not a possession. Those are my terms. Lucien rose slowly, moving around the table until only a few feet separated them. This close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight of whatever world he carried on his shoulders. You're dangerous, Elara Vale. Good. Now you know how I feel every day in this house. Something almost like respect flickered across his face. Dinner, tomorrow night, here, just us. We'll start practicing. Practicing what? Looking like we don't want to murder each other. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It'll be a challenge for both of us. Dinner the next night was excruciating. Elara arrived at 7 to find the dining room transformed. Fewer lights, candles. The massive table replaced by something smaller and more intimate. 2 place settings. Wine already poured. Lucien standing by the window in dark slacks and a shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking less like a crime lord and more like a man trying too hard to appear casual. This is ridiculous, Elara said. Sit down. He pulled out her chair. We're practicing. Practicing what? Playing house? Practicing not flinching every time I come near you. He waited until she sat, then took his own seat across from her. Volkov's people watch body language. If you look terrified every time I touch you, they'll know something's wrong. I'm not terrified of you. Then what are you? The question hung between them. Elara reached for her wine instead of answering. Let's just eat. The meal was elaborate, courses she couldn't name, prepared by staff she never saw. They ate in silence for the first 10 minutes, the clink of silverware against china the only sound. Finally, Lucien set down his fork. Tell me about nursing school. Elara looked up, surprised. What? You were studying to be a nurse. Why? Why do you care? Because I'm trying to have a conversation with my wife. And I'd prefer if it didn't feel like interrogating a hostile witness. Frustration leaked through his careful tone. Just answer the question, Elara. She took a long drink of wine. My mother died when I was 8. Cancer. She spent her last 6 months in a hospital, and the nurses were the only ones who treated her like a human being instead of a diagnosis. I wanted to be that for other people. Lucien's expression softened. That's why you wanted to open a clinic. You've been reading my college essays now? I've been trying to understand who you are. He leaned back, studying her. You spent your entire life wanting to help people, and now you're trapped with someone who hurts them for a living. Must be quite the adjustment. You have no idea. Then tell me, what's the worst part? The question felt like a trap. Elara set down her glass carefully. The worst part is that you're not a monster. Monsters are easy. You hate them, you fear them, you know exactly where you stand. But you... She stopped, searching for words. You're complicated, and that makes everything harder. Complicated how? You threaten to murder people in ballrooms, but you also remember how I take my coffee. You bought me like property, but you gave me a greenhouse. You're violent and controlling and terrifying, and you also... Her voice caught. You also look at me like I'm the only thing in the world that matters, and I don't know what to do with that. Silence. Lucien's hands were flat against the table, knuckles white with tension. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I saw you 2 years ago, hospital cafeteria. You were studying for exams and didn't notice a kid crying at the next table. His mother had just gotten bad news. I could tell from her face. You looked up, saw him, and without thinking, you went over. Gave him your muffin, made him laugh, stayed until his mother calmed down. He paused. I watched you for 30 minutes, and in that time, you showed more genuine kindness than I'd seen in my entire life. Elara's breath caught. That's why you wanted me? Because I gave a kid a muffin? Because in a world full of people who take, you gave without expecting anything back. His eyes met hers. I wanted to know what that felt like, to be around someone who still believed people were worth saving. So you bought me. So I saved you from men who would have destroyed everything good in you. His voice hardened. Your father's debt went to auction, Elara. Underground market. I attended because I do business with some of those people, and I saw your photograph in the listing. Recognized you immediately. The bidding went high. Volkov, a trafficking ring out of Eastern Europe. Some tech billionaire with a taste for unwilling women. I paid triple the highest offer to take you off the market permanently. The room spun. Elara gripped the edge of the table. You're lying. I have the receipts. Why? Why would you do that? Lucien stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His shoulders were rigid with tension. Because I'm a selfish bastard who wanted something beautiful in a life full of ugliness. Because I've done terrible things to terrible people, and somewhere along the way I forgot what goodness looked like. And then I saw you, and I remembered. He turned to face her. I know it's wrong. I know you hate me for it, but I'd do it again, every single time. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man standing across from her had just admitted to buying her like merchandise and called it salvation in the same breath. The worst part was that some twisted corner of her brain understood. In his world, with his rules, he'd done the closest thing to kindness his moral compass allowed. I need air. She stood too quickly, the chair scraping against marble. Elara, don't. Just give me a minute. She walked out onto the terrace, the night wind cold against her flushed face. The ocean roared below the cliffs, waves crashing in rhythms that matched her racing heart. Behind her, she heard Lucien follow, but keep his distance. I'm not going to apologize, he said quietly. I didn't ask you to, but I need you to understand something. He moved closer, still not touching. Everything I've done, the marriage, the rules, the control, it's all to keep you alive. Volkov wants you. Other people want you. And as long as you're my wife, they can't have you. But that protection only works if the marriage looks real. Elara turned to face him. So we're back to playing pretend? No, we're back to survival. His jaw tightened. I'm asking you to trust me long enough to keep you safe. After that, if you want to leave, I'll help you disappear. New identity, new life, anywhere in the world. But right now, we need to convince dangerous people that you're mine. I'm not yours. Then convince them you are. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face with careful fingers. "Please, Elara, let me protect you." She should have stepped back, should have slapped his hand away. Instead, she stood frozen, feeling the warmth of his palm against her cheek and hating that it didn't feel wrong. "1 month," she whispered. "We play the happy couple for 1 month. After that, you let me go." Lucien's expression shifted, something like pain flickering behind his eyes. "1 month, I promise." He dropped his hand and walked back inside, leaving Elara alone with the wind and the terrible awareness that she'd just made a deal with a devil who looked at her like salvation. Check. They fell into a routine that felt like careful choreography designed to deceive an invisible audience. Breakfast together in the sunroom, lunch in the garden when weather allowed, dinner at the intimate table that had replaced the massive one in the dining room. They talked about safe subjects, books, movies, her progress in the greenhouse, his opinions on art she didn't understand. They didn't talk about the past. Didn't mention her father, or the debt, or the men who'd bid on her like livestock. Those subjects lived in the space between them, unspoken and heavy. Lucien touched her more. Small gestures designed to build comfort. His hand at her back when they walked, fingers brushing hers when passing dishes, his jacket draped over her shoulders when she got cold. Each touch was announced with eye contact, asking permission without words. Each time, Elara forced herself not to flinch. The worst part was that it started feeling normal. 1 week into their arrangement, Lucien had business in the city and insisted she come. Security surrounded them, black SUVs, armed men in tailored suits, the whole production. They had lunch at a restaurant so expensive it didn't have prices on the menu, sitting in a private room while men Elara didn't recognize came and went, speaking in languages she didn't understand. Lucien kept her close, introduced her as his wife with genuine pride in his voice, touched her constantly, hand on her knee beneath the table, arm around her waist when they walked, fingers threading through hers like they'd done it 1,000 times. It felt like a performance. It felt like possession. It felt disturbingly real. Afterward, in the car, Elara stared out the window while her mind raced. Who were those men? Business associates. That's not an answer. Lucien's jaw tightened. Some run shipping companies. Others handle distribution networks. A few manage security. Security for what? For businesses that operate outside traditional legal structures. He turned to look at her. You want honesty? Fine. I run an empire built on moving money, goods, and information through channels most people pretend don't exist. Sometimes that involves violence. Usually it involves leverage. Always it involves risk. So you're a criminal. I'm a businessman in an industry without regulations. His voice held no apology. Every dollar you spend in this marriage came from illegal activity, Elara. Every meal, every piece of clothing, the greenhouse you love so much, all of it funded by things that would horrify you if you knew the details. Then tell me the details. No. You promised honesty. No. I promised to tell you about threats to your safety, not to explain every business transaction. He leaned forward, amber eyes hard. Some things are need to know, you don't need to know. Elara's hands clenched in her lap. You're impossible. I'm careful, there's a difference. He settled back against the leather seat. The men at lunch today needed to see us together, needed to believe we're actually married. You did well. Don't compliment me for lying. I'm complimenting you for surviving. His voice softened. I know this is hard, Elara. I know you hate every minute, but it's working. Volkov's people are backing off. Word is spreading that Lucien Devereux's wife is legitimate, real, untouchable. How much longer? 3 more weeks. Then you're free. The words should have brought relief. Instead, Elara felt something closer to dread and couldn't explain why. 2 weeks in, Lucien took her to the opera. Elara had never been, never had the money or the inclination. But Lucien insisted it was important. Old money would be there. People who mattered in circles that intersected with his business. They needed to be seen. Maria provided a dress, midnight blue, elegant without being flashy. When Elara came downstairs, Lucien was waiting in a full tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a different era, dangerous and refined in equal measure. His eyes tracked her descent, something flickering in their depths. You look, don't. Elara reached the bottom step. Let's just go. The opera house was overwhelming. Red velvet, gold trim, boxes rising in tiers toward a ceiling painted with scenes from mythology. Their seats were in a private box overlooking the stage, plush chairs and champagne waiting when they arrived. Lucien settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Have you ever seen opera before? No. You'll hate it. It's 4 hours of people singing dramatically about problems they could solve with one honest conversation. Despite herself, Elara almost smiled. Then why are we here? Because suffering together builds character. He gestured toward the stage as the lights dimmed. Try to stay awake. The performance was exactly as Lucien described, overdramatic, incomprehensible, and weirdly captivating. Elara found herself leaning forward during intense moments, drawn into the spectacle despite not understanding a word. During intermission, she realized Lucien had been watching her instead of the stage. What? Nothing. You're just... He stopped. You get completely absorbed, like the rest of the world disappears. Is that a criticism? It's an observation. He stood, offering his hand. Come on, we need to make an appearance downstairs. The lobby was packed with exactly the kind of people she'd seen at the gala. Wealthy, connected, performatively cultured. Lucien navigated them with practiced ease, keeping Elara tucked against his side while making polite conversation that revealed nothing. Then a woman approached. Mid-30s, stunning in the way that came from expensive maintenance, wearing a dress that cost more than a car. Her eyes locked on Lucien with predatory interest. Lucien. Didn't expect to see you slumming with the arts crowd. His expression remained neutral. Catherine, still buying your way into circles that don't want you? Still buying wives? Her gaze slid to Elara, assessing and dismissive in one look. This must be the famous Mrs. Devereux. Tell me, dear, how much did you cost? Elara felt Lucien tense beside her, felt violence coiling beneath his careful control. She stepped forward before he could respond. More than you're worth, apparently. Her voice was steady. But then some things can't be purchased, like class, or dignity, or knowing when you're not wanted. Catherine's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You're excused. Elara turned to Lucien. I'd like to go back to our seats now. He looked at her with something close to awe. Of course. They walked away while Catherine stood frozen, rage and shock warring across her perfect face. When they reached the stairs back to their box, Lucien pulled Elara aside into an alcove shadowed from the crowd. That was... He stopped, searching for words. Thank you. For what? Defending your honor? Sarcasm dripped from her tone. For defending yourself, and for doing it better than I would have. His hand came up to touch her face, fingers sliding along her jaw with careful reverence. You're extraordinary, Elara. You know that? Her breath caught. They were too close. His body blocked out the rest of the world. His attention focused entirely on her in a way that felt overwhelming, intimate, dangerous. Lucien, I know, rules. But he didn't step back. What if I told you I'm tired of the rules? Then I'd say you don't get to change them just because you're bored. I'm not bored. His thumb traced her bottom lip, feather light. I'm falling for you, Elara. Have been since the wedding, maybe longer, and I know you feel it too. You're delusional. Am I? He leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. Your pulse is racing. You're not pulling away. And right now you're looking at my mouth like you're wondering what would happen if you let me kiss you. Elara's hands came up to his chest. Whether to push him away or pull him closer, she didn't know. This isn't real. We're playing pretend, remember? It stopped being pretend for me weeks ago. His voice was rough, unguarded. I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve a chance. But God, Elara, I want one anyway. The world narrowed to his eyes, his hands, the heat radiating between them. She should have said no. Should have reminded him about boundaries and deals and the fact that he'd bought her like property. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "One kiss, that's all." Lucien's expression shifted. Surprise, hope, hunger. He gave her time to change her mind, time to pull away. When she didn't, he closed the distance and kissed her like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. Not rough, not demanding, just desperate and real and absolutely consuming. Elara's mind screamed warnings, but her body betrayed her. She kissed him back, hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer instead of pushing away. He made a sound low in his throat, need and relief tangled together, and deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair while the other pressed against the small of her back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. "That wasn't nothing," he said quietly. Elara's hands were still twisted in his jacket, still holding on. "It can't happen again." "Why not?" "Because in 3 weeks I'm leaving. We agreed." "Then we have 3 weeks." He pulled back enough to look at her, his expression raw with vulnerability. "Let me have 3 weeks, Elara. Let me show you who I am when I'm not trying to control everything. Let you what? Make me fall for you so it hurts more when I leave? Make you see that maybe you don't have to leave." His hands framed her face. "Maybe this could be real. Maybe we could be real. You're asking me to love a criminal. I'm asking you to love a man who would burn the world down to keep you safe." He kissed her forehead, gentle and devastating. 3 weeks, Elara. That's all I'm asking." She should have said no, should have walked away while she still could, but standing in that alcove with his hands on her face and his heart in his eyes, Elara made the worst decision of her life. 3 weeks, she whispered. "But after that, your choice. Always your choice." He kissed her again, soft and sure. "I promise." The next 3 weeks felt like falling and flying at the same time. Lucien kept his word about showing her who he was beneath the control. He took her sailing in a yacht that cut through the Atlantic like a knife, taught her to shoot at his private range, standing behind her with patient hands guiding her aim, brought her to late-night diners where nobody recognized him and they ate burgers like normal people having a normal date. He talked about his childhood, foster homes and violence, learning early that weakness got you killed, about building his empire from nothing, brick by bloody brick, about the loneliness of power and the weight of constantly looking over your shoulder. And Elara found herself talking too, about her mother's death and her father's slow unraveling afterward, about choosing nursing because she needed to believe people could be saved, about the fear that she was too damaged to ever be normal again. They fit together in ways that didn't make sense. He was violence and control. She was compassion and care. But somehow, in the spaces between, they found something that felt like understanding. The physical came slower. Lucien never pushed, but the tension built like a storm gathering strength. Stolen kisses in the library, his hands in her hair while they watched movies in his private theater. The night she fell asleep against his shoulder and woke in his bed, fully clothed, with his arm around her waist and panic flooding her system until she realized he was still asleep too, holding her like something precious. 2.5 weeks in, she stopped sleeping in her own room, not because he asked, because staying felt safer than the alternative, because waking up next to him had become the best part of her day, because somewhere between the forced dinners and the choreographed appearances and the careful touches, she'd stopped pretending she was falling in love with Lucien Devereux. The realization hit her one morning in the greenhouse. She was planting new herbs when he appeared with coffee and breakfast, settling onto the ground beside her without asking permission. He'd rolled up his sleeves, dirt smudging his expensive watch, talking about expanding the greenhouse and maybe adding a koi pond nearby. And Elara looked at him, this dangerous man sitting in the dirt, planning futures he had no right to assume existed, and felt her heart crack open. "I'm not leaving," she said quietly. Lucien went still. "What?" "In 3 days, when the month is up." She set down the trowel, facing him. "I'm not leaving, Lucien. I'm staying." His expression shifted through a dozen emotions. Disbelief, hope, something so raw it hurt to witness. "You don't have to." "I know, I want to." Her voice shook. "I don't understand it. I don't know how we got here, but I'm staying. If you still want me." Lucien's answer came in the form of his hands on her face, his mouth on hers, kissing her like she'd just given him the world. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "I love you," he said roughly. "I know it's too soon. I know you probably don't. I love you too." The words felt like jumping off a cliff. "God help me. I love you too." They stayed in the greenhouse until sunset, wrapped around each other, talking about futures that felt suddenly possible, about converting part of the estate into the medical clinic she'd always wanted, about traveling once things settled, about building something real from the wreckage they'd started with. That night, Elara went to his bed willingly. Not performing, not pretending, choosing. Lucien touched her like something sacred, taking his time, learning every inch of her skin with reverent attention. When they finally came together, it felt like surrender and claiming an equal measure, like two broken people finding wholeness in the ruins. Afterward, lying tangled in silk sheets with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Elara felt something she hadn't experienced since her mother died. Safe. The attack came 3 days later, at dusk. Elara was alone in the greenhouse planning spring plantings when the first explosion tore through the evening air. The windows rattled, soil cascading from disturbed pots. She dropped to her knees instinctively as automatic gunfire erupted from somewhere near the main house. Screaming, orders shouted in multiple languages, the crack of weapons fired in rapid succession. Terror locked her muscles. She crawled toward the greenhouse door, peering out through glass panels. The estate had transformed into a war zone. Men in black tactical gear swarmed the property, moving with military precision. Lucien's security returning fire from defensive positions. Bodies already littering the lawn. Someone was attacking the estate. Attacking them. Attacking her. A figure appeared at the greenhouse door. Ronan Creed, Lucien's head of security, blood streaming from a gash across his temple. He yanked her to her feet without ceremony. "Move! Now!" "What's happening?" "Volkov. He's making his play." Ronan dragged her toward the main house, weapon drawn, eyes scanning for threats. "Stay low. Don't stop." They ran through chaos. Bullets tore chunks from the stone pathway. Another explosion rocked the garage, flames erupting into the darkening sky. Elara's mind couldn't process the scale of destruction. This wasn't a robbery or a random attack. This was an invasion. Ronan pulled her through a side entrance, downstairs she'd never seen, into a hallway that smelled like concrete and fear. Underground. They were going underground. "Where's Lucien?" She could barely hear her own voice over the pounding in her ears. Handling it, Ronan entered a code on a heavy steel door. It swung open to reveal a room packed with monitors, weapons, supplies. A safe room. Bunker. Whatever the rich called their apocalypse preparations. He pushed her inside. "Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone except me or Lucien. Understand? What if you don't come back? Then wait until morning and use the tunnel in the back corner. It leads to the cliffs. There's a boat waiting." He started to close the door. "Ronan, where is he?" "Where do you think? Fighting for you." The door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, locks engaging with mechanical precision. Elara was alone in the bunker, surrounded by monitors showing different angles of the estate. She watched the battle unfold in real time. Lucien's men falling back to defensive positions, attackers advancing with coordinated precision. This wasn't random violence. Someone had planned this, studied the estate's weaknesses, timed it perfectly. Then she saw Lucien. He moved through the chaos like death given human form. 2 pistols, dark clothing blending with smoke. Every movement economical and lethal. She watched him kill 3 men in rapid succession, barely breaking stride. Watched him coordinate his security through an earpiece while reloading without looking. Watched him become the monster everyone said he was, because they'd come for her. Elara's hands shook as she cycled through camera feeds. More attackers pouring through the breached walls. Lucien's men outnumbered but holding ground. The greenhouse she loved engulfed in flames. Everything burning. She found Lucien again on the monitors. He was pinned down behind a fountain, returning fire against a team advancing from the east wing. Blood stained his shirt, his or someone else's, she couldn't tell. He looked feral, desperate. And then she saw the man flanking him. Elara screamed at the monitor uselessly. Lucien didn't see the threat, didn't see the weapon rising to aim at his unprotected side. The shot took him in the shoulder. He went down hard. Elara's world stopped. She watched Lucien collapse, watched him struggle to rise, watched blood spreading across his shirt in dark blooms. Watched the attacker move in for the kill shot. Ronan appeared from nowhere, tackling the man. They struggled. The weapon fired wildly, and Ronan stopped moving. No. No, no, no! Lucien was on his feet again, injured but mobile, dragging Ronan's body behind cover. more of his security converging on his position. The attackers starting to retreat under sustained fire, the battle turning. But God, so much blood. Time lost meaning. Could have been minutes or hours. The monitors showed attackers falling back, regrouping, finally retreating entirely. Sirens in the distance, police or fire department or both. The estate settling into an eerie quiet broken only by crackling flames and occasional gunfire as Lucien's men secured the perimeter. Then footsteps in the hallway outside. The hydraulic locks disengaging. Elara grabbed the nearest weapon, a pistol she didn't know how to use, and aimed at the door with trembling hands. It opened to reveal Lucien. He looked like he'd gone through hell. Blood soaked his shirt, his face smudged with ash and cordite, eyes wild and unfocused. But alive. Still alive. Elara. Her name came out broken. The gun clattered from her hands. She ran to him, and he caught her with his good arm, crushing her against his chest despite the obvious pain. He was shaking. Lucien Devereux, who faced down rival syndicates without flinching, was shaking like he might fly apart. "I thought I lost you," he whispered into her hair. "When they breached the perimeter, I thought, I'm okay. I'm here. I'm safe." She pulled back enough to see his face. "You're bleeding. Shoulder. It's nothing." "It's not nothing. Ronan's dead." The words came out flat, empty. "He died protecting my position so I could reach you." Elara's breath caught. "Lucien, they came for you, Elara. Volkov sent a hit squad to take you because he figured out the one thing that could destroy me." His hands framed her face, blood smearing her skin. "You. You're my weakness, and now everyone knows." The bunker felt too small, too close. Elara struggled to breathe past the panic clawing up her throat. "What happens now?" "Now?" Lucien's laugh held no humor. "Now we go to war. Because Volkov just made the worst mistake of his life. He went after what's mine. I'm not—" "You are." His eyes burned with something beyond reason. "You're mine, Elara, and I will burn his entire empire to ash for what he tried to do tonight." She should have been terrified, should have run while she had the chance. But looking at this man covered in blood and grief, who just fought through an army to reach her, Elara felt something shift into place. She'd fallen in love with a monster, and monsters protected what they loved with absolute brutality. "Then let's burn it down," she whispered. Lucien's expression shifted, surprise, hunger, desperate relief. He kissed her hard, tasting like smoke and copper and violence. When he pulled back, something had changed in his eyes, something final. "You're sure? Once we start this, there's no going back." Elara thought about the greenhouse in flames, about Ronan's life traded for hers, about the fact that simply existing in Lucien's world had painted a target on her back. "I choose you," she said. "Whatever that means. I choose you." He kissed her again, gentle this time, like sealing a vow. "Then God help anyone who stands in our way." Above them, the estate burned. Around them, the evidence of violence littered every surface. And between them, something dangerous and permanent had been forged in blood and fire. A love story built on obsession and survival, tested by chaos, and emerging stronger for the breaking. There was no going back now, not for either of them. The estate smoldered through the night like a funeral pyre. Elara stood in what remained of Lucien's study while emergency crews worked outside, their flashing lights casting red and blue shadows across walls pocked with bullet holes. The smell of smoke clung to everything, her clothes, her hair, her skin. She couldn't stop shaking. Lucien was upstairs getting his shoulder treated by a private physician who'd arrived within the hour. No hospitals, no police reports. Everything handled internally. The way powerful men handled violence when involving authorities would invite questions nobody wanted to answer. Ronan's body had been removed. 7 other men from Lucien's security detail were dead. The greenhouse was gone, reduced to twisted metal and shattered glass. Her sanctuary, the one place that had felt like hers, erased. Maria appeared in the doorway, her usual composure cracked by exhaustion and grief. "Mrs. Devereux, there's someone here to see you." "I'm not seeing anyone." "He says it's urgent, about the attack." Maria's voice dropped. "He says he has information about who really ordered it." Elara's head snapped up. "Where's Lucien?" "Still with the doctor, But this man insists on speaking with you alone, says it's safer that way. Every instinct screamed trap, but underneath the fear was desperate need to understand why tonight had happened, why people had died, why her greenhouse was ash. Fine. Where is he? The library. What's left of it? Elara followed Maria through hallways that looked like war zones. She'd lived here for weeks and still gotten lost in the mansion's sprawl. Now, with smoke damage and destruction marking every surface, it felt like navigating a nightmare version of somewhere she'd almost started calling home. The library had taken damage but remained mostly intact. A man stood by the shattered windows, silhouetted against the flashing emergency lights outside. Mid-50s, expensive suit despite the late hour, carrying himself with the confidence of someone used to being heard. Mrs. Devereux. He turned and Elara recognized him from the photograph Lucien had shown her weeks ago. Victor Volkov. She took an involuntary step backward. You need to leave. Now. Please. 5 minutes. His accent was thick, Russian vowels bleeding through careful English. I came alone, unarmed. I just want to talk. You attacked us, killed Lucien's people, tried to keep... Her voice cracked. You tried to take me. No. Volkov moved closer, hands visible and empty. That's what I'm here to tell you. I didn't order tonight's attack. You're lying. Why would I lie? If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He gestured toward a chair that hadn't been destroyed. Sit, please. What I have to say, you need to hear it. Elara remained standing, muscles coiled to run. Talk, fast. Volkov sighed heavily. Your father's debt. The one Lucien paid to marry you. It was legitimate. I don't dispute that. But what Lucien didn't tell you was why your father owed money in the first place. Gambling. He had a problem. He had a problem because someone encouraged it, introduced him to high-stakes games he couldn't afford, extended him credit that ensured he'd spiral into debt. Volkov's expression was grave. Someone who wanted leverage over a nursing student with no family and no resources. Someone who saw you years ago and decided you'd be worth acquiring. The room tilted. What are you saying? I'm saying Lucien Devereux didn't save you from your father's debt. He created the debt, spent 2 years manufacturing the circumstances that would force you into his world. Volkov pulled papers from his jacket, laying them on the desk between them. Casino records, loan documents, all trace back to shell companies Lucien controls. He orchestrated your father's downfall to justify buying you. No. The word came out strangled. You're lying. You're trying to turn me against him. Look at the documents. I don't need to talk. Look at them. His voice cracked with something that sounded almost like pity. I know what he told you, that I was going to sell you, traffic you, that he rescued you from terrible men. But it was all theater, Mrs. Devereux. The auction, the bidding, the rescue. He staged it all. Created a villain so he could play hero, made you grateful for a cage by convincing you it was salvation. Elara's hands trembled as she reached for the documents. Financial records, transaction histories, names and dates forming a pattern she didn't want to see. Her father's casino visits beginning 6 months after that day in the hospital cafeteria Lucien described. Loans extended through companies that traced back to Devereux Holdings. A paper trail showing systematic destruction designed to produce one outcome. Her. Why? Her voice barely worked. Why would he do this? Because men like Lucien don't ask for what they want. They engineer situations where taking becomes justified. Volkov's expression was unreadable. He saw you, wanted you, and spent 2 years building the circumstances that would make you his without appearing to force your hand. The debt, the auction, the marriage, all choreographed to make you believe you had no choice while making him look like your protector. The floor seemed to dissolve beneath her feet. Elara gripped the desk, her mind racing through every conversation, every gesture, every moment she'd thought she understood. The coffee prepared exactly how she liked it, not because he cared, but because he'd been watching for years. The books appearing on library shelves, not magic, but surveillance. The greenhouse, not generosity, but manipulation. Everything had been a lie. The attack tonight, she whispered. Did you? I didn't order it, but I know who did. Volkov's jaw tightened.
Lucien has enemies, real ones, people he's destroyed building his empire. One of them learned about you, saw an opportunity. But they weren't trying to take you, Mrs. Devereux. They were trying to kill you. Why would anyone...
Because you're his weakness. And in our world, weakness is opportunity. He moved toward the door. I came here tonight to give you information, not to harm you. What you do with it is your choice. But I'd suggest leaving, tonight, before Lucien finishes with his doctor and realizes I was here. He'll find me.
Not if you don't want to be found. Volkov paused in the doorway.
There's a car waiting at the service entrance. Driver will take you anywhere you want to go. New identity, cash, documentation, everything you need to disappear. This is your chance, Mrs. Devereux. The only one you're likely to get. He vanished into the smoke-damaged hallway, footsteps receding toward exits Elara couldn't see. She stood alone in the ruined library, documents scattered across the desk, her entire reality fracturing into pieces she couldn't reassemble. Lucien had destroyed her father, manufactured her desperation, staged her rescue, made her fall in love with her captor while convinced she was choosing freedom.
She'd told him tonight that she loved him,
Chosen him. Committed to a future built on foundations that were lies stacked on manipulation, so elegant she'd never seen it coming. Footsteps in the hallway, Lucien's voice calling her name.
Elara grabbed the documents, shoving them inside her jacket. Her mind moved through calculations faster than thought. If she confronted him now, he'd explain it away, justify it, make her doubt what she'd just learned. Lucien was good at that, making darkness look like protection, control look like care. She couldn't let him talk his way out of this. Not this time.
There you are. Lucien appeared in the doorway, his shoulder bandaged beneath a fresh shirt, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. I was worried. You shouldn't be alone right now. Elara forced her expression neutral. I needed air. Everything upstairs smells like smoke. Yeah. He moved closer, wincing slightly. Doctor says I'll live. Bullet went clean through. Missed anything important. I've had worse. Good. That's good. The words felt like glass in her throat. Lucien studied her face, concern flickering in his eyes. Are you okay? You look... I'm fine. Just tired. It's been... She gestured helplessly at the destruction. A lot. I know. He reached for her, and it took everything Elara had not to flinch away. His arms came around her carefully, avoiding his injured shoulder, pulling her against his chest. I'm going to fix this. Rebuild everything. Make sure you're safe. I promise. She let him hold her, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek, smelling cologne mixed with antiseptic and blood. This man who'd whispered he loved her, who'd fought through chaos to reach her, who'd built her entire world on foundations of calculated deception. Lucien? Her voice came out small. Yeah? When you saw me in the hospital, that day you talk about, did you know who I was? Who my father was? She felt him tense slightly. What do you mean?
Just, did you know I was already connected to your world somehow? Through my father or anyone else? A pause. Too long. No. You were you. Someone kind in a world that doesn't value kindness. Why are you asking? Because he was lying. She could hear it in the careful cadence of his words, feel it in the tension running through his body. And now that she was listening for deception, she heard it everywhere. No reason, just trying to understand how we got here. His arms tightened around her. We got here because I fell in love with you. That's the only part that matters. Elara closed her eyes, memorizing this moment. The last time she'd let herself be held by Lucien Devereux. The last time she'd pretend to believe his lies. I need to sleep, she whispered. I can barely think straight. Of course. Come on. Our room. I think I'll use the guest room tonight. Give you space for your shoulder. She pulled away, forcing a tired smile. You need rest without me accidentally bumping into you. Lucien's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment or suspicion. If that's what you want, it is. He kissed her forehead, gentle and possessive. Get some sleep, Elara. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding. She watched him leave, waited until his footsteps faded completely, then moved to the window. Below, in the shadows near the service entrance,
A black sedan idled with its lights off. Volkov's escape route, her way out. All she had to do was walk away from the man she loved and the life she'd started to believe in. All she had to do was survive. Elara spent an hour pretending to settle into the guest room while her mind raced through options. She couldn't just disappear. Lucien had security everywhere, cameras tracking every inch of the property. If she made a run for it, alarms would trigger before she reached the gates. She needed a distraction, something big enough to pull attention away from her movements. The fire department was still working near the greenhouse. Emergency crews spread across the property dealing with damage assessment. In all the chaos, with smoke still rising and personnel everywhere, maybe one person slipping away would go unnoticed. Maybe. Elara changed into dark clothes, jeans, a black sweater, running shoes. She stuffed documents and a few essentials into a small bag, moving silently through the guest room. Every sound felt amplified, every creak of floorboard a potential alarm. She waited until 3 a.m., when exhaustion would have dulled even trained security responses, then slipped into the hallway. The mansion was dark except for emergency lighting in strategic locations. Elara knew the basic layout by now. Service stairs in the east wing, leading down to kitchens and staff areas, eventually connecting to the service entrance where Volkov's car waited. She made it 3 steps before a voice stopped her. "Going somewhere?" Elara spun. Lucien stood at the end of the hallway, fully dressed, expression unreadable in the dim light. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I was looking for water, couldn't sleep." "With a bag packed?" He moved closer, each step measured. "Try again, Elara." I was going to check on..." The lies tangled in her throat. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "Pretend." Her voice cracked. "Pretend I don't know. Pretend everything you've told me isn't built on lies." Lucien went very still. "What are you talking about?" "Volkov was here? Tonight. He showed me documents, financial records, everything you did to manufacture my father's debt." She pulled the papers from her bag, throwing them at his feet. "You didn't save me, Lucien. You created the situation that made me need saving. You destroyed my father to justify taking me." Silence. Lucien stared at the scattered documents, his expression shifting through emotions too fast to track. When he looked up, his eyes were cold. "Volkov's a liar. He's trying to turn you against me." "Stop!" Elara's hands clenched into fists. "Just stop. I'm done with the manipulation, done with the careful words designed to make me doubt my own reality. I know what you did. I know what you are, and I'm leaving." "No." The word came out flat, final. "You can't stop me." "Can't I?" He moved between her and the stairs, blocking her exit. "You think I'd let you walk out of here after everything I've done to keep you safe? After tonight?" "Safe?" Bitter laughter burned her throat. "You're the danger, Lucien. You've always been the danger. I was just too blind to see it." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You saw something you wanted and spent 2 years destroying everything in your path to get it. My father, my future, my choice. You took it all and made me grateful for the cage." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I told you I loved you, I chose you, and it was all based on lies." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Not all of it. What part was real, Lucien? The manufactured debt, the staged auction, the marriage I had no choice in." Her voice rose with each question. "Tell me what part I'm supposed to believe." "This." He closed the distance between them, grabbing her arms. "Us. What we built. The way you look at me, the way I look at you. That's real, Elara. Everything else might have been manipulation, but what I feel for you is what? Love?" She jerked away from his grip. "You don't love me. You love owning me. There's a difference." "You don't believe that. I believe you're a monster who got exactly what he wanted, and I'm the idiot who fell for it." She moved toward the stairs. "Get out of my way." "I can't do that." "Then what? You'll lock me up? Chain me to the bed? Prove every terrible thing I just learned about you?" Her laugh was broken. "Go ahead, Lucien. Show me who you really are." Something shifted in his expression. Pain, maybe, or grief. "You want the truth? Fine." Yes, I manufactured your father's debt. Yes, I spent 2 years creating circumstances that would bring you into my world. Yes, I staged the auction to make you think I was saving you instead of claiming you. His voice was rough, unguarded. But I did it because I knew you'd never choose me otherwise. Because I'm a criminal and a killer and everything your moral compass teaches you to run from. So I built a scenario where staying with me looked like survival instead of surrender.
The admission hit like a physical blow. Elara's vision swam. You're admitting it. What's the point of lying now? You already know. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion and desperation bleeding through his control. You asked what part was real. The answer is everything after the wedding. Every conversation, every touch, every moment we spent together, that was real, Elara. You falling in love with me was real. Me falling harder for you than I ever thought possible, that was real.
Built on a foundation of lies. Built on a foundation of obsession that became love. He stepped closer, his eyes burning with intensity. I don't deny what I did was wrong, unforgivable, but I won't apologize for wanting you badly enough to do terrible things to have you. That's who I am. And somewhere in the last 2 months, you fell in love with that man anyway. I fell in love with a lie. You fell in love with me. His voice dropped to something raw. All of me. The control, the violence, the possessiveness, you saw all of it and chose to stay. That wasn't manipulation, Elara. That was you making the same impossible choice I did, choosing love even when it makes no sense. She wanted to deny it, wanted to say he was wrong. But standing in the dark hallway with his words hanging between them, Elara couldn't quite convince herself that what she'd felt was entirely manufactured. The connection between them had been real, complicated and toxic and built on darkness, but real, which somehow made it worse. Let me go, she whispered. No. Lucien, I said no. His voice hardened. You walk out that door, Volkov will find you within 24 hours. And unlike me, he won't keep you safe. He'll use you as leverage against me, and when he's done extracting whatever he wants, he'll put a bullet in your head and dump you where I'll never find your body. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to keep you alive. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. The attack tonight wasn't Volkov, Elara. It was someone else. Someone who knows killing you is the fastest way to destroy me. And there will be more attacks, more attempts, because the entire underworld now knows that you're my weakness. Then let me disappear. New identity, new life. They'll find you, eventually, and I won't be there to protect you. His hands tightened. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was monstrous, but I'm begging you, don't throw your life away because you're angry at me. Stay. Let me keep you safe. After that, if you still want to leave, I'll help you disappear properly. But please, Elara, don't walk into Volkov's trap. She searched his face for deception, for the manipulation she knew he was capable of. But all she saw was desperation and fear, and something that looked terrifyingly like genuine love. How do I trust anything you say? Her voice broke. How do I know this isn't just another level of the game? You don't. Simple. Honest. You have to choose whether to believe me, same way I have to choose whether to let you go, even though it'll destroy me. He released her shoulders, stepping back. So here's the deal. I'll prove Volkov set you up, show you evidence that he's lying about tonight. If I can't prove it by sunrise, I'll personally drive you wherever you want to go and disappear from your life forever. But if I prove he's playing you, if I show you the attack was designed to break us apart, then you stay. Give me a chance to earn back your trust. And if I refuse the deal, then I lock you in a room until the threat is neutralized. I become exactly the monster you think I am. His expression was carved from stone. Your choice, Elara, always your choice. But make it fast because we're running out of time. She looked at him, this man who'd destroyed her life and rebuilt it according to his design, who'd lied and manipulated and somehow still managed to make her feel things she'd never felt before. Logic screamed to run. Survival instinct demanded she take any chance at escape. But underneath the anger and betrayal was a terrible truth she couldn't ignore. Despite everything, she still loved him. And love didn't die just because you learned it was born in darkness. Sunrise, she said finally. You have until sunrise to prove Volkov's lying. After that, even if you lock me up, I'll find a way out. I'll spend the rest of my life running if I have to. Deal. Relief flooded his expression. Come on, my office. Everything you need to see is there. Takis. Lucien's office had survived the attack mostly intact. He moved behind his desk, pulling up files on a computer while Elara stood near the door, arms crossed, maintaining distance. Every cell in her body screamed confusion, anger at his deception warring with the part of her that still wanted to believe in what they'd built. Here, Lucien turned the monitor toward her. Security footage from tonight. Watch the timestamp. The screen showed the greenhouse from an external camera. Elara saw herself working inside, peaceful and unaware. Then figures approaching from the tree line, tactical gear, weapons raised, moving with military precision. See the leader? Front left. Lucien zoomed in on a figure directing the others. That's Dmitry Sokolov, former Spetsnaz, now runs a mercenary group out of Belarus. He doesn't work for Volkov. He works for Konstantin Fedorov. The name meant nothing to Elara. Who? Someone I put in prison 3 years ago. He was trafficking weapons through my territory without permission. I gathered evidence, handed it to federal authorities, let them handle it. Lucien pulled up another file, arrest records, court documents. He got 20 years, swore he'd make me pay. What does that have to do with tonight? Fedorov has connections, money hidden offshore. He contracted Sokolov to hit the estate and kill you specifically. Lucien's jaw tightened. The goal wasn't to take you for ransom. It was assassination. They wanted you dead to make me suffer. Elara's stomach turned. How do you know this? Because I have people inside Fedorov's organization. They sent word 2 hours ago. He pulled up text messages, phone records. Sokolov was paid $500,000 to organize tonight's attack. The target was explicitly you, Elara. Not me, not the estate. You. She read through the messages, her hands shaking. The evidence was damning. Conversations about timing, target specifications, payment transfers, all pointing toward a coordinated assassination attempt. Volkov told you he didn't order the attack, Lucien continued. That part was true. But he lied about why he came here tonight. He didn't come to warn you. He came to drive a wedge between us while you were vulnerable. Make you doubt me. Make you run. Make you easy prey for Fedorov's next attempt. The documents he showed me are real. I won't deny that. Lucien met her eyes. I did create your father's debt. Everything Volkov said about that was true. But his timing wasn't coincidence, Elara. He waited until you'd just survived an attack, until emotions were running high, until you'd be most susceptible to manipulation. That's how men like Volkov operate. Elara's mind raced, trying to separate truth from lies in a world where everyone seemed to be playing angles she couldn't see. So you both manipulated me. You just did it first. Yes. No denial, no justification. I'm not asking you to forgive what I did. I'm asking you to see that running right now will get you killed. She moved to the window, staring out at the estate grounds. Dawn was approaching, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. Somewhere out there, people wanted her dead. And inside this mansion, she was trapped with a man who'd orchestrated her entire life. I need time, she said quietly. Time to process. Time to figure out what I believe. I'll give you whatever you need. Just stay, please. Lucien's voice was raw. I know I don't deserve it, but stay. Elara turned to face him. This man she loved and hated in equal measure. This monster who looked at her like she was his salvation. I'm not promising anything beyond survival. You understand that? I understand. We sleep in separate rooms. You don't touch me. Don't try to... Her voice cracked. Don't try to make me fall for you again. I need distance to think. Whatever you want. He stood slowly, favoring his injured shoulder. Elara, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but it's true. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think the anguish in his eyes was genuine, but Lucien Devereux was too good at deception, and she'd learned the hard way that his truth was whatever served his purposes. Keep me alive, she said. After that, we'll see. Checked. The next 48 hours felt like living in purgatory. Elara kept to her room except for meals, which she ate in silence while Lucien watched from across the table. He didn't push, didn't force conversation. just existed in her peripheral vision like a constant reminder of everything broken between them. The estate remained in lockdown, extra security, cameras everywhere. Lucien coordinated with his network, tracking threats, building cases, slowly dismantling whatever remained of Fedorov's operation. And Elara watched it all from her window, feeling like a prisoner in everything but name. On the third morning, Maria knocked on her door. "Mrs. Devereux, there's a call for you. Mr. Devereux says it's important." "Who is it?"
"He didn't say, but he's insisting you take it privately." Maria's expression was unreadable. "In his office." Elara followed her downstairs, dread pooling in her stomach. Lucien stood beside his desk, phone in hand, his face carved from granite. "It's Fedorov," he said without preamble. "He wants to talk to you." "What? Why?" "Take it. Put it on speaker." His voice was cold. "I want to hear what he says." Elara took the phone with trembling hands, pressing the speaker button. "Hello?"
"Mrs. Devereux." The voice was cultured, carrying a faint Russian accent. "I apologize for the circumstances of our introduction. My name is Konstantin Fedorov, and I have a proposition for you." Her eyes met Lucien's. "I'm listening." "I want Lucien Devereux to suffer. The attack on your home was designed to accomplish that, but I've reconsidered my approach. Killing you would be quick, merciful even. But what if instead of taking your life, I offered you your freedom?"
Elara's breath caught. "What are you talking about?"
"I have resources, money, connections, everything necessary to give you a new identity and a life far away from Lucien's world." Fedorov's voice was smooth, persuasive. "Walk away from him. Disappear completely, and in exchange, I'll ensure you're safe, protected, free." "And what do you get out of it?" "The satisfaction of watching Lucien Devereux realize he destroyed his own happiness through his actions." A pause. "He orchestrated your father's downfall, Mrs. Devereux, manufactured your desperation to justify claiming you. A man like that doesn't deserve loyalty. He deserves to lose everything he manipulated his way into obtaining." Lucien's expression was unreadable, but his hands were clenched white-knuckled against the desk.
"Why would I trust you?" Elara asked. "You tried to kill me 3 days ago."
"A mistake in strategy. I've since realized there are better ways to destroy a man than through violence." Fedorov's voice softened. "You have 48 hours to decide, Mrs. Devereux. After that, my offer expires, and we return to the original plan. Choose wisely." The line went dead. Elara set the phone down carefully, her hands shaking.
"He's offering me a way out." "He's offering you a grave with prettier wrapping." Lucien's voice was tight. "The moment you leave my protection, he'll kill you. This is just another manipulation." "Like you'd know anything about manipulation." "Elara, shh!"
"Don't." She held up a hand. "Every single person in your world is trying to use me as a weapon against you. Fedorov, Volkov, probably a dozen others I don't even know about. And you started this whole thing by making me a pawn in whatever sick game you play with people's lives."
"I know, and I'm sorry." "Stop saying you're sorry." Her voice cracked. "Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back my father or my freedom or my ability to trust anything you say. Sorry is just another word you think will make me forgive the unforgivable." Lucien stood there, taking the verbal assault without flinching. When she finally ran out of words, he spoke quietly. "What do you want from me, Elara? Tell me how to fix this." "You can't." "Simple, final. Some things stay broken." She walked out before he could respond, before the tears burning her eyes could fall, before she could admit that despite everything, part of her still wanted him to have answers. That night, Elara made a decision. She couldn't stay with Lucien. Every moment in his presence reminded her of the lies and manipulation that had brought her here. But she couldn't trust Fedorov either. His offer was too convenient, too perfectly timed to be anything other than another trap, which left one option. She'd have to disappear on her own terms. The estate security was tight, but Elara had spent 2 months learning its rhythms. She knew when shifts changed, knew which cameras had blind spots, knew the service tunnels Ronan had mentioned during the attack led to the cliffs and presumably escape routes beyond. She waited until 2 a.m., dressed in dark clothes, carrying nothing but cash she'd found in the greenhouse,
and documents she'd hidden from Volkov's visit. Elara slipped into the hallway, moving silently through shadows she'd memorized. The tunnel entrance was behind a supply closet in the sub-basement, exactly where Ronan said it would be. She opened it carefully, praying the hinges wouldn't— "You're making a mistake," Elara spun. Lucien stood 20 feet away, fully dressed, expression unreadable. "How did you know you'd try this?" "Because it's exactly what I do in your position." He moved closer. "But you're not thinking clearly, Elara. Emotions are clouding your judgment." "My judgment is fine. It's my survival instinct finally working properly." "By running into the night with no plan and no protection?" His voice hardened. "Fedorov has people everywhere. The moment you step off this property, you're exposed. How long do you think you'll last?" "Longer than I'll last here, being slowly poisoned by proximity to you." The words landed like a blow. Lucien's expression cracked for just a moment before he locked it down. "I can't let you leave." "You don't have a choice, don't I?" He reached behind his back, and when his hand returned, he was holding a gun. "I told you once I'd do anything to keep you safe. Did you think I was exaggerating?" Elara's blood turned to ice. "You're going to shoot me?" "I'm going to stop you from killing yourself through stupidity." The weapon didn't waver. "Get away from the tunnel." "No." "Elara, shoot me or get out of my way." Her voice was steady despite the terror flooding her system. "Those are your only options, Lucien, because I'm done being your prisoner, and I'm done playing whatever twisted game this has become. Either you let me go, or you prove you're exactly the monster I think you are." They stared at each other across 20 feet of concrete and broken promises. The gun remained pointed at her chest. Lucien's face was a mask of anguish and fury. "You think I won't do it?" His voice was rough. "You think I'll let you walk into danger because some part of me still has a conscience? I think if you pull that trigger, you'll prove everything Volkov and Fedorov said about you, that you never loved me. You just loved owning me. That's not— Then prove it. Put down the gun. Let me make my own choice for once in this nightmare you created." Silence stretched between them like razor wire. Elara's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. Any second now, Lucien would either lower the weapon or fire it, and she'd learn whether the man she'd fallen for had ever existed at all. The gun trembled in his hand, just slightly, just enough to reveal the war happening behind his controlled expression. Then slowly, infinitely slowly, he lowered it. "Go." The word sounded like it was torn from somewhere deep. "Get yourself killed if that's what you want. But know that I'll spend every remaining day of my life trying to keep you alive from a distance, because that's what you do when you love someone. You protect them, even when they hate you for it." Elara turned toward the tunnel before he could see the tears finally spilling over, before he could see that part of her wanted to stay despite everything, before her resolve could crack under the weight of his broken expression. She was 3 steps into the darkness when Lucien's voice stopped her one final time. "Elara, when you realize running won't fix what's broken between us, when you finally understand that we're both destroyed by the same things that brought us together, come home. The door will always be open." She didn't respond. Couldn't respond without falling apart completely. So Elara stepped into the tunnel and let the darkness swallow her, leaving behind the man who'd built her world and burned it down in equal measure. Leaving behind the monster she'd loved. Leaving behind any chance at the life they might have had if it hadn't been built on ruins from the start. The tunnel stretched ahead into black unknown, and for the first time in months, Elara was truly. The tunnel was absolute darkness, and the smell of salt water mixed with earth that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. Elara ran her hand along the rough stone wall, moving forward by touch alone, her breathing loud and ragged in the confined space. Behind her, the estate disappeared into memory. Ahead, somewhere in the black, was freedom or death or something between the two. Her foot caught on uneven ground. She stumbled, palms scraping against stone, and the pain felt oddly clarifying, real. The first thing in months that wasn't wrapped in Lucien's careful orchestration. The tunnel sloped downward, and after what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, she saw it, a faint gray light ahead. Exit. Ocean air rushed through the opening, cold and sharp, carrying the crash of waves against rock. Elara emerged onto a narrow ledge carved into the cliff face. Below, maybe 40 feet down, The Atlantic churned black and violent. To her left, crude stairs cut into stone led down to a small dock where a speedboat was tied, rocking in the waves. Exactly like Ronan said. Escape waiting for whoever made it this far. She descended carefully, testing each step before committing her weight. The stairs were slick with spray, treacherous in the pre-dawn darkness. One slip would send her into the rocks below, and nobody would find her body for days, if ever. The boat was basic, 8 feet long, outboard motor, half tank of fuel, keys hidden under the pilot seat like Ronan promised. Elara's hand shook as she untied the mooring line. She'd been on boats maybe 3 times in her life, never driven one, but how hard could it be? Throttle forward, steering wheel, don't hit rocks. The engine coughed to life on the 3rd try, loud enough to wake the dead. Elara didn't wait to see if anyone had heard. She pushed away from the dock, gave it gas, and the boat lurched forward into open water. Cold spray hit her face. The ocean was rough, waves pushing the small boat in directions she didn't intend. She gripped the wheel with both hands, steering away from the cliffs, away from the estate lights glowing on the hilltop behind her, away from everything. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful. Indifferent. The world kept spinning regardless of whether Elara Vale was running for her life or trapped in a mansion built on lies. She aimed the boat south, toward the coastal town she'd seen on maps in Lucien's study. 30 miles. Maybe an hour at this speed. From there, she'd disappear into crowds and chaos, buy a bus ticket to anywhere, start over with nothing but the clothes on her back and documents proving Viktor Volkov wasn't the only liar in this story. The boat's engine sputtered. Elara's stomach dropped. She checked the fuel gauge, still showing a quarter tank. Checked the throttle. Everything looked fine. The engine coughed again, running rough, then smoothed out. Some kind of mechanical issue she didn't have the knowledge to diagnose. Keep going. Just keep going. She was maybe 10 miles from shore when she saw it. Another boat, larger, faster, cutting through the waves toward her from the north. Black hull, no markings, running without lights despite the dawn. Every instinct screamed danger. Elara pushed the throttle as far as it would go. Her boat responded with a surge of speed, but the engine was still running rough, and the pursuing vessel was gaining fast. Professional. Purpose-built for exactly this kind of chase. They closed the distance in minutes. Elara could see figures on the deck now, 3 men, tactical gear, weapons visible. Not Lucien's people. The realization hit like ice water. Fedorov. He'd been waiting. Probably had people watching the estate, tracking any movement, ready to intercept the moment she ran. And she'd gone exactly where he expected, straight into open water with nowhere to hide. The pursuing boat pulled alongside, matching her speed. One of the men raised a weapon. "Cut your engine! Hands where we can see them!" Elara's mind raced through impossible options. She could try to outrun them, except her boat was slower and failing. She could try to fight, except she was unarmed and outnumbered. She could surrender, except Fedorov's offer had been manipulation, and these men weren't here to transport her to safety. They were here to finish what the attack on the estate started. The man fired a warning shot. The bullet tore through the water 10 feet from her bow, close enough to send spray across the deck. "Last warning! Engine off now!" Elara's hand moved toward the throttle. Then she saw it, jagged rocks breaking the surface maybe 200 yards ahead, waves crashing white against them. Navigation hazard. The kind of thing a small, maneuverable boat might slip through if the pilot was desperate or insane. The kind of thing a larger boat would struggle with. She yanked the wheel hard right, aiming straight for the rocks. "What the hell is she doing?" One of the men's voices carried across the water. Elara's boat hit the first wave wrong, nearly capsizing. She fought the wheel, keeping the bow pointed toward the gap between 2 massive rock formations. The space looked impossibly narrow. If she miscalculated by even a few feet, she'd smash into stone and sink within minutes. Behind her, the pursuit boat tried to follow, realized the danger too late, and veered away. They were circling, looking for another approach. Buying her seconds she couldn't afford to waste. The rocks loomed. Elara could see barnacles crusted on their surfaces, could hear the deafening crash of waves hitting stone. 30 feet, 20, 10. She shot through the gap with inches to spare on either side, scraping paint off the starboard hull, engine screaming in protest. Then she was through, in calmer water on the far side, gasping for air she'd forgotten to breathe. The pursuit boat couldn't follow. Too wide, too heavy. They'd have to go around, adding precious minutes to the chase. Elara pushed the failing engine toward shore, praying it would hold together just a little longer. The coastal town was visible now. Buildings, docks, early morning activity, civilization, witnesses, safety in numbers. The engine died completely half a mile from shore. No cough, no warning, just silence except for waves and her own panicked breathing. She tried the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Dead. Looking back, she saw the pursuit boat clearing the rocks, accelerating toward her position. 2 minutes, maybe 3 before they reached her. Elara grabbed the documents, shoved them inside her jacket, and dove into the ocean. The cold hit like a physical blow, driving air from her lungs. She'd grown up in the Midwest, learned to swim in public pools, had no experience with open ocean and its currents that pulled and pushed with terrifying strength. But the shore was right there, close enough to see people walking on the beach, and drowning was better than whatever Fedorov's men had planned. She swam. Arms burning, legs kicking, salt water in her mouth and eyes. The current fought her, trying to pull her parallel to shore instead of toward it. She adjusted, swimming at an angle, remembering something from a childhood safety class about rip currents. Voices behind her, the pursuit boat reaching her abandoned vessel. Men shouting orders. Elara didn't look back, just swam harder, her waterlogged clothes dragging like weights, her lungs screaming for air. The beach was 100 yards away. 50. 25. Her feet touched sand. She stumbled forward, waves pushing her toward shore, and collapsed on the beach, gasping like a drowned thing brought back to life. People were staring. A jogger stopped, concerned. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need help?" Elara pushed herself to her knees, looking back at the water. The pursuit boat was hovering offshore, too visible to approach now that witnesses surrounded her. They'd have to break off. Find another opportunity. "I'm fine," her voice was raw. "Just fell off my boat. I'm fine." The jogger didn't look convinced, but nodded slowly. Elara forced herself to stand, walking up the beach on shaking legs toward the town beyond. She needed dry clothes, needed a phone, needed to disappear before Fedorov's people regrouped. She made it 3 blocks before a car pulled alongside her. Black sedan, tinted windows. Engine idling with predatory patience. Elara ran. The car accelerated, cutting her off at the next intersection. Doors opened. 2 men emerged. Not tactical gear this time, just expensive suits and expressions that promised violence. "Mrs. Devereux, Mr. Fedorov would like a word." "I'm not interested." Elara backed away, looking for escape routes. The street was busy with morning commuters, but nobody was intervening. Nobody wanted to get involved in whatever this obviously was. "It's not a request." One of the men moved toward her. Elara bolted down a side street, her wet shoes slipping on pavement, her exhausted body protesting every movement. Behind her, footsteps. Pursuit. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. She ducked into an alley, looking for exits. Dead end. Dumpsters and brick walls, and nowhere to go. The men appeared at the alley entrance, blocking her escape. "This can be easy or hard, Mrs. Devereux. Your choice." Elara's hand closed around a broken bottle near the dumpster. Pathetic weapon. But it was something. "Stay back." They laughed, actually laughed, and why wouldn't they? She was soaking wet, exhausted, armed with trash, and they were trained professionals sent to collect a target. The first man moved in. Elara swung the bottle. He caught her wrist easily, twisting until she dropped it with a cry of pain. Then his partner was there, pulling her arms behind her back, zip-tying her wrists with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Fedorov is going to be very pleased we found you." They dragged her toward the car. Elara fought, kicking, screaming, trying to draw attention, but morning commuters kept walking, kept pretending they didn't see. Urban survival instinct. Don't get involved, not your problem. Then a gunshot cracked through the morning air. One of the men holding Elara dropped, blood spreading across his chest. The other spun, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. Another shot. He went down too. Elara stood frozen, wrist still bound, staring at the bodies at her feet. "What the hell?" "Get in the car." The voice came from behind her. Familiar. Impossible. She turned slowly. Lucien stood 20 feet away, weapon lowered but ready, his injured shoulder clearly causing pain despite the neutral expression on his face. Behind him, 3 of his security team fanned out, covering exits. "I said get in the car, Elara." No anger in his voice, just exhaustion and grim determination. "We don't have time for arguments. You followed me."
Of course I followed you. Did you really think I'd let you run into this alone? He moved closer, and she saw the damage in his eyes. Sleepless nights and desperation barely contained. "I had people tracking you from the moment you entered the tunnel, boat waiting offshore in case you needed extraction, because that's what you do when you love someone who's determined to get themselves killed. You just murdered 2 people. I saved your life. There's a difference." He nodded to one of his men, who produced a knife and cut the zip ties binding her wrists. "Now get in the car before more of Fedorov's people show up. We're exposed here." Elara's mind couldn't process fast enough. She'd escaped, run straight into another trap, been rescued by the man she was running from, and now he was telling her to trust him again. "Why should I go anywhere with you?" "Because Fedorov has a dozen more teams spread across the city, and you're the most wanted woman on the eastern seaboard right now. Because running didn't work and staying didn't work, and the only option left is dealing with this head on." His voice hardened. "Because whether you like it or not, we're in this together, and the only way either of us survives is if we stop fighting each other and start fighting the people actually trying to kill you." "You orchestrated my entire life." "I know, and we'll deal with that, after you're not being hunted by professional killers." He gestured toward the car. "Please, Elara, I'm begging you, get in the car." Sirens wailed in the distance, police responding to gunshots. Lucien's team was already moving toward vehicles, preparing to evacuate before authorities arrived. Elara looked at the bodies on the ground, at Lucien standing there covered in other people's blood, asking her to trust him one more time, at the city around them that had stopped being safe the moment she'd become connected to his world. She got in the car. Lucien slid in beside her, and the door closed with a finality that felt like accepting a fate she couldn't escape. The convoy pulled away from the alley, moving quickly but not so fast as to draw attention, disappearing into morning traffic while police closed in on the scene behind them. "Where are we going?" Elara's voice came out flat. "Somewhere Fedorov can't reach. Somewhere we can end this." He was texting rapidly, coordinating with people she couldn't see. "I've been tracking his operations for 72 hours. I know where he is, what he's planning, and I'm going to finish it tonight." "By doing what? Killing him?" "By giving him what he wants." Lucien's expression was carved from stone. "Me. In exchange for your safety, permanent protection, a guarantee he'll never come after you again." Elara's stomach dropped. "You're going to trade yourself? It's the only way." He wasn't looking at her, couldn't look at her. "Fedorov wants revenge. Fine. He can have it, but you get to walk away. Clean break. New identity. Money. Freedom. Everything I should have given you from the beginning instead of building a cage and calling it love. That's suicide. That's paying my debts." Finally, he turned to face her. "I destroyed your life to possess you, Elara. The least I can do is sacrifice mine to free you." The car was moving through industrial districts now, away from crowds, toward warehouses and empty lots where violence could happen without witnesses. Elara's mind raced through implications. If Lucien traded himself to Fedorov, she'd be released. Free. Everything she'd been trying to achieve by running, except Lucien would be dead. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've run every scenario. This is the only outcome where you survive. His voice was steady, resigned. "I need you to promise me something. When this is over, when you're safe, I need you to live. Really live. Open that clinic you wanted. Help people. Do all the good things I kept you from doing. Don't let what I did to you destroy who you are." "Lucien, promise me, Elara." She couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. This man who'd built her prison was now offering to die to set her free. And despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, she didn't want him to. God help her, she didn't want him to die. "What if I don't want you to do this?" Her voice cracked. "Then you'd be the only one." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've done terrible things to terrible people, Elara. Destroyed families, ended lives, built an empire on suffering.
Maybe this is how it was always supposed to end. Maybe this is the first good thing I've done in 20 years. The car stopped outside a warehouse that looked abandoned. Broken windows, rust-stained walls, weeds growing through cracked pavement. But Elara could see signs of recent activity. Tire tracks, disturbed dust. This was a place people used when they wanted privacy, when they wanted to hurt someone without interruption. Lucian's security team exited first, weapons drawn, scanning for threats. Then Lucien himself, moving stiffly because of his shoulder, helping Elara out with surprising gentleness given what was about to happen. "Stay with Marcus." He nodded toward one of his men. "When it's done, he'll take you somewhere safe. Follow his instructions. Don't argue. Don't try to interfere. Just let me do this." "This is insane. This is love." He touched her face one last time, fingers trailing along her jaw with devastating tenderness. "I'm sorry I wasn't better for you. Sorry I didn't deserve what you were willing to give. But I'm not sorry I loved you, even if it was selfish, even if it destroyed us both. I'm not sorry I got to feel what it's like to be loved by someone like you." Then he kissed her, soft and final and tasting like goodbye. When he pulled away, Elara was crying. "Don't do this. I have to." He stepped back, nodding to Marcus. "Keep her safe. That's all that matters now." He walked toward the warehouse entrance, and Elara's entire body screamed to stop him, to run after him, to refuse this sacrifice that felt wrong on every level. Marcus's hand closed around her arm. "Mrs. Devereux, we need to move to the backup position." "Let me go." "Ma'am, please. You can't help him, but you can honor his choice by staying alive." The warehouse door opened. Figures emerged from inside. Armed men, Fedorov's people, escorting Lucien into the building. He didn't look back. Didn't give her one final glance. Just disappeared into darkness while Elara stood helpless in the parking lot. Then gunfire erupted from inside the warehouse. Not the controlled shots of an execution. The rapid chaos of a firefight. Automatic weapons, explosions, screaming. Marcus pulled her toward a vehicle. "We need to go now." "What's happening? What is that?" "I don't know, but we can't." The warehouse door burst open. Lucien stumbled out, blood streaming from a wound on his head, weapon in hand, firing back at figures pouring through the entrance behind him. Not surrendering, fighting. "It was a trap," he shouted toward his team. "Ambush! Get her out of here!" Everything happened at once. Fedorov's people flooding from the warehouse, more emerging from surrounding buildings. They'd been waiting, prepared, turning Lucian's sacrifice into a slaughter. Marcus shoved Elara toward a vehicle while the security team returned fire, trying to cover the retreat. Bodies dropping. Muzzle flashes lighting up the morning. Chaos. Elara saw Lucien go down, saw him struggle to rise, saw three men converging on his position, and something inside her broke. She grabbed the weapon from Marcus's belt, ignored his shout of protest, and ran toward the warehouse. Toward Lucien, toward the violence she'd spent her whole life avoiding. She fired without aiming, didn't know if she hit anything, didn't care, just needed to reach him. One of the men attacking Lucien turned toward her. Elara pulled the trigger again. He dropped. Then she was there, kneeling beside Lucien, her hands covered in his blood, his eyes struggling to focus.
"You idiot," she gasped. "You complete idiot. I told you not to do this. You're supposed to be—" He coughed, blood on his lips. "Supposed to be safe. Shut up. Just shut up and stay awake." Gunfire roared around them. Lucien's security team fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. They were outgunned, surrounded, minutes from complete annihilation. Lucien's hand found hers, gripping tight. "I love you. Need you to know, whatever happens. I love you." I know, you bastard. Now help me get you up before we both die here." She pulled him to his feet, supporting his weight, half dragging him towards cover. Bullets tore chunks from the pavement where they'd been seconds before. Marcus appeared, providing covering fire, screaming coordinates to someone on his radio. Then helicopters overhead, spotlights cutting through dawn, amplified voices demanding everyone drop their weapons. Police, federal agents. Someone had called in the military-grade cavalry. Fedorov's people scattered like roaches, disappearing into warehouses and alleys, abandoning the attack in favor of escape.
Lucien's team did the same, melting into shadows with the practiced ease of men who'd done this before. And Elara stood in the middle of the war zone, covered in blood and gunpowder residue, holding up the man who'd orchestrated her entire life, while authorities closed in from all sides.
Well, Lucien said weakly, this is going to be complicated to explain.
Despite everything, Elara almost laughed. Almost. If you die before I get to yell at you properly, I'll never forgive you. Then I guess I better survive. His weight increased against her as consciousness started slipping. Elara held him tighter, refusing to let him fall, refusing to lose him after everything. They'd survived Fedorov, survived Volkov, survived each other's worst impulses and the violence that defined Lucien's world. Now they just had to survive what came next. The federal agent separated them immediately. Elara watched through the back window of an unmarked sedan as paramedics loaded Lucien into an ambulance, his blood staining the gurney, his eyes searching for her until the doors closed and blocked him from view. Then the ambulance pulled away with sirens wailing, and she was alone with two agents whose expressions promised nothing good. They took her to a facility that wasn't quite a hospital and wasn't quite a prison, somewhere between, designed for people who occupied legal gray areas. A woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes sat across from Elara in an interrogation room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. My name is Agent Sarah Reeves, FBI, and you, Mrs. Devereux, are in a considerable amount of trouble. Elara's hands were still covered in dried blood, Lucien's blood. She couldn't stop staring at them. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. Eventually. Right now, I want to understand what happened in that warehouse. Reeves opened a file, spreading crime scene photographs across the table. 14 dead, 23 wounded, enough weapons to start a small war. And at the center of it all, a nursing student turned mob wife who allegedly opened fire on suspected criminals. Care to explain?
I was defending my husband. Your husband is Lucien Devereux, suspected head of one of the largest criminal organizations on the East Coast. You understand we've been trying to build a case against him for 6 years? Elara met Reeves' gaze without flinching. Then you understand he has lawyers better than God. Whatever you think you can charge him with won't stick.
Maybe, but you're not Lucien Devereux. You don't have his resources or his protection. Right now, you're just a woman who killed 2 people this morning. Reeves leaned forward. Help us build a case against your husband, and I can make a lot of your problems disappear. Immunity, protection, a fresh start far away from his world. No. You haven't heard the offer. I don't need to. Elara's voice was steady, despite the exhaustion crushing her. I'm not testifying against Lucien. I'm not helping you destroy him. You want my statement? I was kidnapped by Viktor Volkov's people, escaped, was pursued by Konstantin Fedorov's men, and my husband rescued me. Self-defense. That's the story. That's the only story. Reeves studied her for a long moment. You're protecting a man who bought you like property. I'm protecting the man I love. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a victim suffering from Stockholm Syndrome who doesn't recognize she's being manipulated. From where I'm sitting, you look like a federal agent who spent 6 years failing to touch Lucien Devereux and thinks maybe his wife is a softer target. Elara leaned back, crossing her arms. I want my lawyer, now, or charge me with something. Those are your options. Reeves's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Won't be my first. Probably won't be my last. The interrogation continued for hours. Elara stuck to her story. Kidnapping, pursuit, rescue. Said nothing about the estate attack or Volkov's visit or the tunnel escape. Nothing that would give them leverage against Lucien. By the time they finally let her go, the sun was setting, and she'd been awake for almost 40 hours straight. Marcus was waiting outside the building, looking worse for wear but alive. Mrs. Devereux, Mr. Devereux asked me to bring you to him. Where is he? Private medical facility, secure location. The feds can't touch him there, and his lawyers have been running interference all day. Marcus opened the car door. He's been asking for you. The facility was disguised as a luxury hotel, but the security and medical equipment gave away its real purpose. A place where people with money and dangerous lives could receive treatment without government oversight. Marcus led her through corridors that smelled like antiseptic and expensive cologne, finally stopping at a door guarded by two armed men. Inside, Lucien lay in a hospital bed that probably cost more than most people's cars, hooked to monitors tracking vitals, his shoulder freshly bandaged, his head wrapped in gauze, but alive, conscious, and looking at her with an expression that made her chest ache. "You stayed," he said quietly.
Of course I stayed, you idiot! Elara moved to his bedside, exhaustion and relief and fury tangled together. What the hell were you thinking walking into that warehouse? You had to know it was a trap. I knew, but I also knew Fedorov wouldn't negotiate unless he thought he had the advantage. Lucien's voice was rough from pain or medication or both. I needed him overconfident, needed him to bring all his people to one location so my team could identify them. Your team? I saw your team. Half of them are dead. The team you saw was the distraction. I had 30 more positioned around the perimeter, tracking every person Fedorov brought to that warehouse. We now have identities, connections, locations for his entire operation. He grimaced, shifting position. It worked. At a cost, but it worked. Elara stared at him. You used yourself as bait, used me as bait, risked everything on a plan that could have gotten us both killed. Yes, and you didn't tell me. Because you would have tried to stop me, or insisted on a different approach. Or, he stopped, meeting her eyes. Because I needed you angry enough at me to run, needed Fedorov to believe we were broken, so he'd think taking us both would be easy. The realization hit like ice water. The fight. Your confession about manufacturing my father's debt, you wanted me to leave. I wanted Fedorov to think you'd leave, wanted him to commit resources to capturing you so we could identify and eliminate his entire network in one operation. Lucien's expression was carved from exhaustion and guilt. And yes, I used your pain as part of the plan. Added one more manipulation to the pile. I'm sorry, Elara, but it was the only way to end this permanently. She should have been furious, should have hit him, screamed at him, walked out and never looked back. Instead, she laughed, bitter and broken and edged with hysteria. You're unbelievable, you know that? Even when you're trying to save me, you're still manipulating everything around you like pieces on a chessboard. It's who I am. No apology in his voice, just fact. I see patterns, exploit weaknesses, control variables. It's how I've survived this long. It's how I built an empire. And yes, it's how I orchestrated our entire relationship from the beginning. He paused. But what I feel for you, that was never strategy, Elara. That's the one thing I can't control, or manufacture, or manipulate into existence. I love you, genuinely, completely, even if I don't deserve to. Elara sank into the chair beside his bed, every ounce of energy draining away. I don't know how to reconcile the man who destroyed my father with the man who almost died protecting me today. You can't. They're the same person. I'm both the monster and the man. Always have been. He reached for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she let him take it. I'm not asking you to forgive the unforgivable. I'm asking you to decide whether what we built after the lies is worth salvaging. And if I say no, then Marcus has instructions, new identity, financial support, a life far away from here. I won't stop you, Elara. Won't chase you. Won't manipulate circumstances to bring you back. This choice is yours, really yours, for the first time since we met. The monitors beeped steadily. Outside the window, the city lights were starting to glow against the darkening sky. Elara thought about the greenhouse that no longer existed, about her father buried under debts manufactured to trap her, about the woman she'd been before Lucien Devereux decided she was worth destroying her world to possess. That woman was gone, had been gone since the moment she walked down the aisle in a wedding dress she didn't choose. But maybe the woman sitting here now, scarred and angry, and somehow still in love with a monster, maybe she was worth something too. I hate you, she said quietly, for what you did, for who you are, for making me love you anyway. I know, but I don't want to leave. The admission felt like ripping out her own heart. I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to start over pretending none of this happened, because it did happen, and it changed me, and maybe, her voice cracked, maybe I need to see where this goes when it's not built on lies. Lucien's eyes closed briefly, relief and pain, and something that looked like gratitude washing over his face. Then stay. Not as my prisoner. Not as someone I manipulated into submission.
Stay as my partner, my equal, someone with full knowledge of who I am and what I've done, choosing me anyway. I don't even know what that looks like. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out together. He squeezed her hand. No more secrets. No more manipulation. Just honesty, even when it's ugly. Deal? Elara looked at him. This man who'd built her cage and broken it open in the same breath. This monster who loved her with a ferocity that terrified and compelled in equal measure. Deal. But if you ever manufacture my reality again, I'll put a bullet in you myself. Fair. He almost smiled. I'd expect nothing less. 3 weeks later, federal charges against both of them were quietly dropped. Insufficient evidence. Witness recantations. The kind of legal maneuvering that happened when people had money and lawyers willing to exploit every technicality. Elara didn't ask how much it cost. Some questions were better left unexamined. Fedorov was arrested by international authorities in Belarus, facing charges that would keep him imprisoned for decades. His network dismantled, his people scattered or in custody. Volkov disappeared. Some said to Moscow, others said to a grave. Either way, he was no longer a threat. The estate was being rebuilt. Lucien hired architects who respected Elara's input instead of imposing his vision. The greenhouse was designed bigger, more functional, with space for the medical clinic she'd always wanted to open. They were converting the east wing into treatment rooms and offices, staffed by medical professionals Lucien somehow recruited without her asking. Technically, it's a tax write-off, he'd explained when she questioned the expense. Completely legal, philanthropic, and it makes you happy, which is worth more than any financial consideration. She'd kissed him then, because for all his flaws, Lucien Devereux had learned to speak her language. Not manipulation disguised as generosity, but actual listening followed by action. They rebuilt their relationship the same way they rebuilt the estate, slowly, carefully, addressing structural damage before moving forward. Lucien attended therapy at her insistence, working through childhood trauma and violent coping mechanisms with a professional who specialized in exactly his brand of broken. Elara went too, processing the manipulation and forced marriage and twisted love stories she couldn't quite classify as entirely bad or entirely good. Some nights were harder than others. She'd wake from nightmares about the warehouse, about drowning, about her father's face when he'd apologized for debts she didn't know would become chains. Lucien would hold her through the panic attacks, his presence steady and real, proving that monsters could learn tenderness if they wanted it badly enough. Other nights, she'd find him standing in the library at 3 a.m., staring at nothing, and she'd know he was replaying every manipulation that brought them together. She'd sit with him in the silence, not offering forgiveness because some things stayed unforgivable, but offering presence, partnership in rebuilding something from ruins. 6 months after the warehouse, they married again. Not at a cathedral surrounded by criminals and forced witnesses. Not with a dress she didn't choose and vows spoken under duress. This time, in the greenhouse, rebuilt and beautiful, filled with herbs and flowers and growing things that proved life continued after destruction. Just them. An officiant. Maria as witness because she'd survived everything alongside them and deserved to see it end differently than it began. Elara wore a simple white sundress she'd chosen herself. Lucien wore a suit without the armor of his usual formality. They wrote their own vows this time. I promise to never manipulate you again, Lucien said, his voice steady despite emotion threatening to break through. To give you truth even when it makes me vulnerable. To be the partner you deserve instead of the captor I was. And to spend every remaining day proving that monsters can change if they have someone worth changing for. Elara's throat tightened. I promise to stay, even when it's hard, to forgive what can be forgiven, and to be honest about what can't. To build something real with you from the wreckage of what we were, and to remind you every day that you're more than your worst choices, even if those choices shaped us both. They exchanged rings this time, simple bands, no diamonds, no ostentatious wealth, just gold circles symbolizing commitment freely given instead of forced. When the officiant pronounced them married, Lucien kissed her like he was sealing a promise instead of claiming ownership. And Elara kissed him back, tasting salt and sunshine and the complicated flavor of love that survived despite every reason it shouldn't. Maria applauded softly. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Devereux. For what it's worth, this version is much better. Bar was pretty low, Elara said, but she was smiling. Afterward, they walked through the gardens that were still recovering from the attack. Some things remained damaged, scars in the landscape that would take years to fully heal. But other things were growing back stronger, adapted to survive what had tried to destroy them. I've been thinking, Lucien said as they reached the cliff edge where ocean wind carried the scent of salt and possibility, about stepping back from some of my business operations, transitioning to more legitimate ventures. Elara looked at him, surprised. You'd do that? I'd try. It won't be quick. Unwinding an empire takes time. But yes, I'd try. He turned to face her, afternoon sunlight catching amber in his eyes. You asked me once what part of our relationship was real. The answer is everything after I stopped trying to control you and started trying to deserve you. That's the part worth keeping. The rest, the violence, the criminal empire, the reputation, that's negotiable if it means building a life you can live in without compromising who you are. I'm not asking you to change completely. I fell in love with who you are, darkness included. I know, but I'm asking myself if I want to be this forever, or if maybe there's something better waiting if I'm brave enough to reach for it. He pulled her closer, his hands settling at her waist with familiar possessiveness that no longer felt like prison. You make me want to be better, Elara. That's terrifying and compelling in equal measure. She rested her forehead against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, real, proof that both of them had survived when survival seemed impossible. We're a disaster, she murmured. We're a work in progress. Same thing. His laugh rumbled through his chest. Maybe, but we're our disaster, nobody else's. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped around each other on the cliff edge where the estate met the ocean, where solid ground gave way to endless water. Behind them, the greenhouse rose from reconstructed ruins, sunlight through glass casting rainbow patterns across new growth. Ahead, the Atlantic stretched toward horizons they couldn't see but could imagine together. The marriage that began as a prison had become something stranger and more complex. A partnership built on honesty after dishonesty, love after manipulation, choice after coercion. Not perfect. Not even entirely healthy by conventional standards. But theirs, real, chosen. You know what the worst part is? Elara said quietly. What? I think I'd choose you again. Even knowing everything. Even with all the pain and manipulation and forced circumstances. If I could go back to that moment in the cathedral, part of me thinks I'd still end up here. Lucien pulled back enough to see her face. That doesn't make you weak. Doesn't make me smart either. Makes you human. Complicated. Capable of loving imperfect people in imperfect ways. He touched her face with careful fingers. Makes you exactly who I fell in love with. A woman with terrible taste in men? A woman brave enough to choose love even when it doesn't make sense. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Somewhere below, waves crashed against rocks with the same relentless rhythm they'd maintained for millennia, indifferent to human drama, continuing regardless of who survived and who didn't. Elara and Lucien turned back toward the greenhouse, walking side by side through gardens that were learning to bloom again. The estate lights were coming on, warm against approaching darkness, marking territory that had been prison and battlefield and was slowly, painfully, becoming home. Inside, Maria had prepared dinner. They ate together in the small dining room, not the massive formal space from early in their marriage, but the intimate one designed for actual conversation instead of performance. They talked about the clinic's progress, about books Elara was reading, about Lucien's gradual transition away from criminal operations and toward legitimate business ventures that wouldn't require violence to maintain. They didn't talk about her father. That wound stayed too raw. Maybe always would. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, only lived with. Elara had accepted that the man she loved had destroyed the man who raised her, and those two truths would exist in her heart alongside each other forever, contradictory, painful, and somehow bearable because she'd chosen to carry them. After dinner, they walked upstairs together. No separate rooms now. No locked doors keeping them apart. Just one shared space they'd built together from compromise and communication instead of coercion. Lucien stood by the window, looking out at the estate grounds lit against night. Do you ever regret it? Staying? Elara came up beside him, sliding her hand into his. Every day. and never, both at once. How does that work?
I regret what it cost to get here. The manipulation, my father, the violence, all of it. She squeezed his hand. But I don't regret you. Don't regret what we built after the lies ended. Don't regret choosing to stay when I could have run. That part, the us that exists now, I'd fight to keep. Even though I'm still a criminal?
Even though you're still working on becoming less of one. She smiled slightly. You're a work in progress, remember? I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was the dishonesty, the manipulation. As long as you're giving me truth, I can handle everything else. Lucien turned to face her fully, both hands coming up to frame her face with devastating gentleness. I love you, Elara Vale. The real you. The complicated, angry, compassionate, fierce woman who survived me and chose to stay anyway. That's not manipulation. That's not strategy. That's just truth.
I love you too. The words still felt strange on her tongue, loving the man who'd orchestrated her captivity. But they were true. Impossibly, undeniably true. You're a monster, and somehow that doesn't change what I feel. Then we're both monsters now. He kissed her softly. You did shoot 2 people to save me. Self-defense. Keep telling yourself that. She laughed against his mouth, the sound surprising them both. We're terrible people.
We're surviving people. There's a difference. They moved to the bed together, and what happened next was tender and real, and nothing like their wedding night. No fear, no coercion, just 2 damaged people finding comfort in each other's brokenness, building something that resembled healing from materials most people would have thrown away. Afterward, lying tangled in silk sheets with Lucien's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Elara thought about the woman she'd been before the cathedral. The nursing student with dreams of helping people who believed the world could be divided into good and evil with nothing between. That woman was gone, had been destroyed by debt and manipulation and a wedding she didn't choose. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the woman she'd become, hardened by survival, complicated by love, capable of violence when necessary, maybe she was better equipped for a world that refused to fit into neat categories. What are you thinking? Lucien's voice was drowsy. That we're going to open that clinic and it's going to help people, really help them. She propped herself up to look at him. That's my condition for staying in your world. We do something good, something real, something that proves monsters can create beauty if they try hard enough. Deal. He pulled her back against his chest. Whatever you need. I need you to keep being honest, keep changing, keep proving that the man I love exists alongside the criminal you were. Still am. At least partially. Then keep proving you're more than that. Her voice softened. Because I need to believe people can change. Need to believe love can survive darkness. Need to believe we're building something worth all the pain it took to get here. We are. His arms tightened around her. I promise, Elara. Whatever time we have left, we're spending it building something good from all the bad. Together. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other while the estate settled into night around them. Outside, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm. Inside, 2 people who'd survived manipulation and violence and twisted obsession learned what it felt like to rest without fear. The next morning, Elara woke to sunlight streaming through windows and Lucien already awake beside her, watching her with an expression that still made her heart stutter. What? She mumbled. Nothing, just, you're here. You stayed. I said I would. I know. But every morning I wake up surprised anyway. He kissed her forehead. Come on. Maria's making breakfast and we have meetings with the clinic's architects. Your dream's becoming real today. They got ready together, falling into a routine that felt surprisingly domestic for 2 people whose relationship had been forged in chaos. Downstairs, Maria had set breakfast on the terrace overlooking the ocean, and they ate while discussing renovation timelines and medical supply orders and all the mundane details that made up actual life instead of survival. The greenhouse caught morning light, casting green shadows across the stone pathway. Soon, it would be filled with patients, people who needed help and couldn't afford it elsewhere. People like her mother once was, people who deserved kindness from a world that rarely offered it. And Elara would be there, helping, healing, proving that even lives built on darkness could create light if they tried hard enough. She looked at Lucien across the table, This man who'd destroyed her life and rebuilt it according to his design, who'd learned to give her truth after years of manipulation, who was trying to become better even though better was harder than anything he'd done before. He wasn't perfect. Neither was she. Their love story was complicated and messy and born from circumstances that should have destroyed them both. But it was theirs, real, chosen. And in a world full of forced circumstances and manipulated outcomes, maybe that was the only thing that mattered. Ready? Lucien asked, extending his hand across the table. Elara took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, feeling the promise in that simple gesture. Ready. They walked toward the greenhouse together, toward the future they were building from ruins, toward the clinic that would help strangers, toward whatever came next in a life neither of them had planned, but both had chosen. Behind them, the estate rose against the morning sky, rebuilt, scarred, beautiful in its imperfection. Ahead, the ocean stretched toward horizons filled with possibility. And between the two, standing in the space where destruction met reconstruction, Elara Vale and Lucien Devereux held hands like people who'd learned the hard way that love didn't require perfection, just honesty, partnership, and the willingness to keep choosing each other day after difficult day for whatever time they had left. The marriage that began in a cathedral surrounded by violence ended in a greenhouse filled with growing things. The obsession that could have destroyed them both became the foundation they built something better on. The manipulation that should have been unforgivable became the lesson that taught them how to love without possession. It wasn't a fairy tale, wasn't even entirely healthy by conventional standards, but it was real. It was theirs. It was enough. And sometimes in a world built on lies and violence and impossible choices, enough was everything.